With technology entering schools overnight, what is the way forward for teaching learning in schools? As schools across India transition to the new ways of operating, teachers are using multiple online tools to conduct online classes and assessments. We know this is only a temporary solution. What we really need is an integrated solution which will help us seamlessly manage all our learning resources, assessments, and meet students' and parents' expectations. How can Altura help? Altura is an integrated learning solution that will develop 21st century skill among learners through project-based learning, cross-curricular resources, and 360 degrees multi-dimensional progress cards. Aligned to National Education Policy 2020 and developed in partnership with IIT Delhi.
My heartiest congratulations to Macmillan Education India for the launching of Altura, their foray into primary education in the Indian system. In the IIT system, we always emphasize on how to learn rather than what to learn. And I am very confident that with the launching of Altura, Macmillan Education India is taking a right step towards project-based learning for igniting young minds through primary education that will take India into the future.
Altura's project-based pedagogy makes teaching and learning fun and effective. With extensive support of digital resources, pre-designed assignment and lesson plans, assessments, and many more exciting features at the tip of their fingers, teachers will not only have a seamless teaching experience, but will also have a lot of me time. Gives parents visibility into their child's performance at a touch of a button. It works seamlessly across PCs, laptops, tablets, and smartphones, and on both iOS and Android. Enhance your school's academic performance by taking data-driven decisions. Be the best with Altura.
Rhapsody's unique methodology places art at the center of academic learning. Using music and visual art, our teachers enable art integration in education through a step-by-step process. First, we mapped art along skills that children need for holistic learning. We then took the mapped skills and applied them to academic lessons for each class. Last, we created songs and activities that allow children to sing their lessons, always with joy. Next, we measured their learning along a dimension that includes academic improvement, musicality, artistic intelligence, and confidence. Each month, this is rigorously assessed and design taught between educator and institution. At the end of the year, we are able to teach through art, integrate, assess, empower. Welcome to the new reality of art integration, music and art being used to teach STEM and other disciplines. Welcome to Rhapsody.
Good morning and welcome to everyone to this very new, very innovative Art Integration Conclave, the first edition. This was an idea that we came up with at Rhapsody, which is the organization that I head and I founded, and in partnership with our very dear friends, Macmillan Education India. And the reason that we decided to get into this topic in greater detail is, as we all know, the National Education Policy of 2020 has now looked at art integration with a far more detailed and integrated focus. And we are now at the brink of having to implement it in schools. What does this mean? What does this hold for the future? How is this going to really help us? Is the objective of this conclave. Accordingly, this conclave has been split into three themes. The first is inspiration, where we look at what the inspiration for art is, especially from higher education. The second is implementation, where we will actually get into how this is going to get implemented in schools. And the third is inculcation, where we want to look at how are we going to assess this, how is this going to fit into the report card, etc., which are all many issues that schools and educators face. I am Anil Srinivasan. I play the piano. Many of the schools that we work with are already here. But aside from that, with a passion for education, I founded Rhapsody, which works on STEM and academic subject learning, but using music as the tool. The academic team is headed by very well-known musician Dr. Sudha Raja, and our team of nearly 180 trainers have been doing this for the last 8 years. Without further ado, I will welcome this morning with a little tune and to our very first guest, but this is the tune, and I'm going to continue playing tunes the whole day today. This is tune number 1. So I start with that. Once again, welcome to the first edition of the Art Integration Conclave, conceptualized by Rhapsody and in partnership with Macmillan Education. I want to place on record my thanks to Macmillan, especially Vandana, for taking this baton forward. We move to the first session on inspiration. It is my greatest honor to introduce our first guest panelist for the day, none other than Dr. Bhaskar Ramamurthi, who is the director of IIT Madras. Apart from being the director of IIT Madras, he is known very much across engineering conclaves and associations in the country. He's a fellow of the Indian National Engineering Academy, the IEEE, many awards and honors to his credit, apart from having to manage probably one of the hottest institutions in the country. Little known to perhaps the usual coterie of people is Dr. Bhaskar's very deep interest, involvement, and learning in the arts. This is not something that immediately strikes people. And we want to welcome him on this panel because who better than the director of IIT Madras to actually talk about where higher education itself is headed. Is it enough if students are only exposed to maths and science and are arts not relevant? How does arts help a child? How does arts help learning? How does he see this shaping up, this idea of art integration as we move into the 21st century? Welcome, Dr. Bhaskar. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this. You've been a long-time friend and a supporter, and it is our greatest honor to have you here, sir.
Thank you, Anil, and my thanks to your organization, Rhapsody and Macmillan, for having me on this program. and my greetings to all those who have assembled in this program to participate today in your conclave. So let me begin by saying that, I think it is very well known for probably centuries, if not more, that the business of growing up, the business of taking a child, freshly born, absolutely godlike child to and letting the child grow up into a man or a woman who is able to deal with both the positives and the negatives that they are going to face in the world. It's something that actually at one level happens pretty easily if you know how to go about it, but otherwise it can be quite a nightmare. And it's well known that you need a mix of learning in learning, picking up of knowledge, because humans are, as they're probably among the few species in the world who actually pass on knowledge from one generation to another. I won't say the only one, but definitely among the few who have taken it to a pretty sophisticated level. So picking up knowledge, understanding, hopefully as we grow wisdom. And then the other thing is the ability to deal with, we're a social animal. So how do you deal with others? How do you work with others? Everybody knows that it's teamwork that delivers astounding results. Everybody knows that, whether you're fighting a war or whether you're fighting a pandemic. So everybody knows this. And how do you make teams work? After all, the individuals have to align and do it voluntarily and not under the baton. So how do you do this? So everybody knows, and it's been well known, that the arts play a very big role in this. In fact, in our tradition, the Lalita Kala, as we call it, have been central in this. And it is in the past, I think a lot of it was picked up in the home environment, in the social environment. If you are in a community that has community festivals in which you have to, the people, youngsters have to put up a dance and so on and so forth, do something, carry some palanquin, whatever. I think whole lot of activity was, a lot of this learning was in the social space. Sometimes in the home too. You get trained in music and so on, dance and so on at home. Increasingly, this is now moving into the school space, because the current lifestyle, nuclear families, most parents depend entirely on an outsourced entity called the school to do all of this. So I think in that context, we have to think about what schools have to do before we get to higher education. So it is very clear to me that schools have to not only focus on STEM or whatever, all the, not just science and technology and engineering and mathematics, but I would say in the social sciences, the arts, everything in terms of the knowledge aspect of it. But they also have to equally focus on the arts, on sports, and all the other stuff that, as I said, was happening more in the social sphere earlier. And there's a lot of theories about left brain, right brain, and all that. I don't want to get into it. I think you can read it up. I'm not a very pedantic person. I don't want to get into that. But so in a school that I'm involved with, in a rural school, actually meant for fairly people without privilege, we actually implement this in a very, very serious manner. It's a girls' school. All the girls go through, yoga, go through sports, go through music, dance. And in the school, of course, they do, a limited amount of this, maybe one music class a week, one dance class a week, and so on. And then we also offer off school hours, more rigorous classes for those who are interested, actually also free of cost, but, for those who are interested. And actually quite a few children turn up on their own for going deeper in this. And then they also learn, the fine arts. Today, actually, it's very interesting that one of the things that comes in the way of what I would call appreciation building and amateur learning is the difficulty to get to first base. If you want to play a violin or a mridangam or a veena, or if you want to do sculpture or something, you have to first train your fingers and train your mind and train your hand. And it's so laborious and so exacting a process that many people just give up. One of the nice things that's happened because of technology is that, the kind of instrument that Anil was just playing, it's fairly easily accessible. you can't produce abaswaram on that. You may not be able to play a tune well, but you can't produce abaswaram on that. Whereas on the violin, as you have very well known, if somebody is learning violin in the house, it's very hard on the others. Okay, and mridangam is similar. You can't produce any sounds in the initial few months, but today on a rhythm keypad you can. And similar, I would say even sculpture, with 3D printing and so on. The ability to get something done, I think, is from the mind to the reality is very important. If somebody wants to learn the skills to do it by their own hands, that can come later. So I think my general point is a lot of tools today, the ability to do karaoke. If you can hold the tune, I think today you can have the joy of belting out a song with music. We couldn't do that when we were kids. It was very, very dull. Even if you could hold your own, the song would sound so half-baked because there's no accompaniments. There's one poor guy who's known to you who claims he can play the mridangam or the instrument. He can't do it well, and he or she can't do it that well, and then the whole thing flops. But today you can do karaoke. So I think that all these should be used by schools to really enable kids to enjoy and learn in the process. I'm not even going to go to the extent of benefiting STEM and so on. I think those are all second order things, but I think they need this very badly. At the end of this, they'll be able to look people in the eye, to be able to converse, to be able to communicate, to be able to work as teams. And when you play sports or when you participate in these things and you find somebody is better than you, you also learn to take, what you might call competition. You'll find that there's a place for everybody. There's a place for you too, but you don't get worked up because somebody is better than you in something. So these are all very important learnings which are missing if you don't have this. Broadly, I would say, strong engagement with sports, arts, and kids definitely need both sports and arts. They are growing; they need both of them. Now I'll come to higher education. So and I'll restrict myself to the IIT because that's what I'm familiar with. So we have a peculiar situation that the boys and girls who come here have already given away 4 years of their life to very rigorous STEM learning at the expense of everything else. And that's not very good, but that's unfortunately the way it is. So what we decided that to do is that every person who does get into the IIT, we wanted to make sure in their 4 years or 5 years here, they have the opportunity to make up and to actually pick up something, at least one, there. So it's now too old to do both sports and arts. We have to leave it to first of all, can't force anybody to do anything. So it's like a big, when you go to these big buffets with 180 dishes and so on in weddings. So we just sort of offer a whole lot of clubs to these students in the sports, in the arts, in fine arts, everything, including cooking, and just let people discover something other than what they do in class as a passion, pursue it, learn it, work with others, team up, and so on. So people learn, to sing, and then they're able to participate in social singing in the hostel. It's a huge, very, very important. Instead of shying away and hiding in the room, people are able to do social dancing. People are able to, participate in some generate their own music, if they learn a little bit. And then, as I said, these tools are always there. Putting up plays is very, very important. There was much more of it, interestingly, in the olden days when we had no tools, with just a bed sheet and and people at home. But people don't do it now. When you have all the tools, you can actually record a script, you can record music, you can record dialogues, and you can lip sync. You can put up even a background by projecting from a laptop. You don't need a big painted backdrop. So things have become easier, and yet children are not doing plays. So these are all very important, and we have sort of a soft target that every student in IIT Madras should be engaged in one activity at least other than their academics. We don't force it. We don't call people and say, how come you're not doing anything? But we track this. We actually track how many students are registered in how many things, and how, what is the ratios and so on. And our idea is, if we are not doing a good job of putting this big menu in front of them and enticing them, if a very large percentage are not engaged in at least one such activity. So I would stop with this and say, I would say school is very important, and we are doing this in our rural school, and it's working wonders. The girls, when they come out, we only run to 10th standard, but the girls who are graduating are really, this is a school where in an area where, English is not spoken, but they are able to speak in English. They're able to speak in Tamil. We even teach them some Hindi, and they're able to put together a quick. If they ask in the annual day, they put up a dance. It looks nice. They learn. They know enough to how to carry themselves. They can hold a tune. They can all sing together. They can, if you put up a play, they can produce a script including songs, and they can deliver dialogues with passion. So they don't have the fear. They don't have diffidence. I think these are all the things that really matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's very important for us to hear this from you because as you know, the IITs also bear the yoke of course, being the pioneers as far as STEM education is concerned. But it's important to hear from you that even within the IIT campus, the encouragement of what we would call the human skills, the humane skills of social emotional learning through the arts, etc., is encouraged. I think in a way, what we are hearing you say is also that this is how we used to live, right? Long before the process of formal education came up, that families would get together, music would be made, art would be encouraged. There was a lot of creativity in the way we lived. But somewhere in the process of our hankering after certain formal strictures of educational process, largely borrowed from the West, unfortunately, that certain innate skills have been missed. And I think the idea of art integration and bringing art into education again is in a way going back while going towards the future. I think I would put it that way.
I think even drawing and coloring was there because columns were so big. I remember my sisters all used to spend hours doing this column in front of the house. So,
and which has obviously multiple benefits. It's not only about the drawing skill that you pick up, but it's like you said, the social skills. It's also wires your brain very, very differently. When that I can say, I know you and I share that in common. Musical training has definitely sharpened the way we do calculations, for example. Rhythm has taught us that. I mean, it has multiple other benefits other than just the art itself, and I think that's been the greatest learning. We really wanted you to start the proceedings today because the message of art coming from IIT is what we wanted, and I think the direction is clear. I think the future, I'm sure, going by what you're saying, the future is also getting a lot into interdisciplinarity, right? So people need to be able to understand the connections between things and not just one thing at a time. So I think
the biggest thing that's happening, Anil, is that today, especially when we take people at the high accomplishment end of the STEM area, what really limits them in their performance after that in their work is actually their other skills.
Yeah.
And most of the feedback from potential employers and others is that they lack other skills. And then you organize classes for soft skills and communication skills and so on. It's very pathetic, actually.
Correct.
So we should actually pick this up through this route. And the ones, we can see the difference in IIT, even between the ones who play sports and the ones who don't, leave alone the arts. Because once you play sports, you know how to take loss, you know how to work as a team, you know how to give somebody else the role when they are better at it than yourself. I mean, this is what really completely, constraints in companies when they create teams to build an IC or something, that some fellow who's very competitive or very envious will actually ruin the whole thing. Right. So, these are things you learn through sports. You could run a class and you tell people, thou shalt not be envious. It doesn't work.
Correct.
Okay. So I think these are very important beyond, I would say, just the business of, learning you to calculate faster or something like that. That's really not what it is about. And what I learned is that, when I was a student in IIT, I thought through and I said, well, all these things that companies are looking for, we learned it at home. We learned it in our social sphere. We had to deal with so many people. We had to deal with uncles, aunts, visitors, and you had to know how to handle it. You had to know when to duck, when to say what. And today they don't learn those things. So that's really where the problem is. And how do you provide that? You can't do it through classroom teaching. You have to actually give the environment where they learn. So that's really what it's about. And the last thing I would say is, I saw your introduction, while it's good to have assessments and objectives and so on. But really, education at all levels, I would dare say, is about having fun while you learn. And unfortunately, we have taken a lot of the fun out of the STEM part of it. It's so competitive right from school. At least in the non-STEM part of it, in the arts part of it, I would like to encourage schools to retain the fun part of it. Fun meaning fun and sort of non-competitive, non-assessment. You can assess some amount. I think it's important to assess, but not really to share it with the kids so much, or to even rank people and so on, but more to figure out where the program is working at a group level. And really, people should learn without worrying about why they're learning and how well they're learning. I think it's very important. At least this part of it, let them do it that way. Unfortunately, it's impossible to get that into the main curriculum. Even if you have a school where they say we de-emphasize grading and marks, the parents want it. So it's like it's an impossible battle. Okay, so.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think to end that, I would say when we say assess, I think we're looking more to make sure that we are tracking and monitoring that the child has enough of a balance across things, that it should not become, exclusively focused into one thing. One of the things that we keep pointing out is that we are largely talking at children. We are not talking to children anymore. And we keep giving them rules and rules to assess by. Children don't follow rules. And I think in not following rules is where the maximum creativity is to be found. I think that's sort of the direction.
I'd like to sign off with a lovely WhatsApp I saw yesterday. There's a maze, and there's a cat at one end, and there's a a fish or something at the other, and the child is expected to help the cat find the fish, and the child actually draws a straight line outside the maze straight to from the
Exactly.
That's absolutely brilliant. Okay, so
that's it. That's basically what it is. That's where the creativity comes in, right? The simplest objective is the straight line. Why do you even have to go through the maze?
Exactly. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhaskar Ramamurthi, for your time. We know what a busy time it is for you, especially in a very challenging year. So thank you once again. Means a lot to us.
Thank you. I'm signing off. Thank you.
So we just heard Dr. Bhaskar. It was really in terms of inspiration to all of us. I mean, who better than the director of IIT Madras? And he himself is a very talented percussionist, unknown to many, and has always believed that arts and STEM go together. You shouldn't sort of keep it aside. So we wanted to start with that inspiration. I'm also very glad that he talked about not getting too caught up in the idea of assessments. How is that going to map on to the objective in front of us with schools? Remains to be seen in later sessions. For the next session, we have another extremely inspirational person, not just academically, but to the country as a whole. He's got laurels and distinctions aplenty in the field of economics, looking at macroeconomics. He is on a part-time basis, he is on the advisory committee, economic advisory committee to the Prime Minister himself. A very distinguished academic holding multiple academic positions, including Distinguished Professor of Finance and Economics at CRIA, with various affiliations in universities in Singapore and across the world, serves on many industry and bodies concerning economics. And again, therefore, somebody coming to us from the social sciences space, but also for me personally has always been an inspiration, as well as his very, very strong belief in Indian culture and the fact that we should not lose it in the process of strictures and education processes. I'm very proud to welcome Dr. V. Anant Nageshwaran. We have Dr. Anant joining us from Singapore. So, good morning, sir. Is it good afternoon for you? It's good morning from us.
So I think it's closer to good afternoon here. Good morning to all of you. And I think after hearing Anil's introduction, I wasn't sure if he was talking about me or somebody else, because it felt so good to hear that. Thank you, Anil. So I should probably carry Anil with me whenever somebody has to do an introduction about me in a public forum. Thank you, Anil. As Anil pointed out, in my brief stint in CRIA University as a full-time dean of the business school, one of my good fortunes was to get to know Anil, whom I have only observed from a distance, being in the audience in his concert. So I think I would consider that as a very ambiguous benefit or a positive fallout of having been associated with CRIA University as the dean of the business school. Right now, I'm a visiting professor there. Thank you. So the topic, I think I was very happy to listen to Dr. Bhaskar Ramamurthi's remarks and the conversation that ensued after his remarks between the two of you, Anil. I think it was amazing, valuable, and a lot of lessons for all of us even to reflect on, not just for children. And also, I think the entire effort of Rhapsody itself over the last several years to teach STEM through art achieves multiple purposes. Obviously, it enables the children to absorb complex math and science concepts, but also in the process introduces them or exposes them to art itself, and some of them would develop a multifaceted personality as a result of it. And also through art, then they get exposed to the culture and the traditions and the Indian way of life. So I think the work you are doing with lakhs of children having been already introduced, the work that Rhapsody is doing in terms of these multiple dimensions is very, very invaluable, because these kids are going to go on to grow into adults, and they will become definitely more rooted, grounded, and mature adults than if it were the case that they were simply engineering, math, or science graduates or medicine. So I think the topic you have therefore chosen for this workshop is or this seminar is really important, because when I teach economics, the first day of the class, I actually give them an overview session on what economics used to be and what it is now, and it is somewhat related to what you are trying to do. I kind of tell them, first thing, economics used to be part of this group of subjects called PPE, politics, philosophy, and economics. But lately, especially since the 1980s, economics, because of physics envy, tried to ground itself in mathematics and sort of tried to make it appear that it was a deterministic physical science and not a social science subject to context, culture, history, and philosophy. So, in fact, economics is not a science, a physical science, because it doesn't give rise to theories that are falsifiable. Economic theories are not falsifiable simply because they depend on the context. Whereas physical sciences, you can construct counterfactual experiments and prove or disprove the theory. So the reason I bring it up is this kind of sensibility to what economics is can also come through and will come through exposure to art, because art introduces students, not just economic students but higher education students, to the very idea that human beings are complex living creatures. And to say that human beings are irrational is not to suggest that they are stupid. That's actually a very wrong interpretation of the word irrational. It simply means that they don't simply do the calculation of optimizing the economic value of any decision. Rather, they actually take into consideration a whole host of factors, emotions, cultural notions of fairness, ties with people. All these things have to go into the mix of making a decision or making a choice or choosing one alternative and foregoing another. So it is purely, the word irrational simply means that your calculations are simply not only based on cold-blooded logic. So in that sense, uh, uh, exposure to art actually makes human beings irrational in that sense. And element of irrationality means to give recognition to the complexity that human beings have to negotiate when they make choices. And art introduces them to that irrationality, to that complexity, and to make them appreciate things well beyond very narrow criteria and technicalities, which are very important when they have to deal with interpersonal issues. Because if you go into public policy space, with which I am familiar, one of the things that you learn very quickly is that public problems are what they call wicked problems. They are not benign problems. The word wicked is not so much used in the sense of malevolence, but purely in terms of complexity. There are no logical beginnings and logical ends. It is not as if you have a problem statement, you come up with a few alternatives, set up a criteria, you decide which alternative to choose, you execute, and then you monitor. It doesn't work that way. There is, as we say, there is something called political economy behind every economic decision. Similarly, these kinds of awareness, the wickedness comes, the wicked nature of the problems we deal with in societies the complexity is introduced to students through their exposure to art because it deals with emotions. Of course, the important thing in that is not only it deals with emotions, but also makes people understand and reflect. Because art is nothing if it is not reflective. And today, art is being, in fact, channelized or even sort of deployed not to reflect, but also to pass instant judgments on complex matters. And some of the artists are guilty of doing that. So, but art actually is to be channelized or galvanized or deployed for the purpose of learning how to reflect, learning how to go inward rather than outward, and so that we understand ourselves better, because that is the precondition to understanding the world around us. And I think that is a role that art does, and therefore to introduce art at the very early age, which is what you're doing, is actually something very important, and not just do it at the higher education level, because the absorptive capacity of children is much higher. By the time our children come to the higher education institutions, they may probably be preset in their ways and in their thinking. So therefore, this service that Rhapsody is doing is to quote unquote catch them young, introducing them to art. Of course, one question that listeners may ask is, if art is so important and enables human beings to reflect, to understand complex emotions, then how come that sometimes artists themselves don't reflect these qualities? And that is the paradox, and that is the nature of the Maya, or the illusion that human beings are always subject to. So I think I will leave my prepared remarks with that thought, that ultimately any technique or any exposure to art should naturally better not only the listeners, but also its practitioners. Without that, it doesn't serve its purpose. Thank you, Anil. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. I have an answer to that particular dilemma that you put us in, and that is to say that artists also need to be grounded in policy, economics, and other sciences in order that their emotional side of their decision making is balanced with the more rational side. I think it is the reverse for them.
Right. In fact, you're absolutely right, Anil, because then even artists sometimes approach it as a matter of technical proficiency. Right. To be mastered through practice, and then you render it, but then ultimately the purpose behind that art form is lost, just as the purpose behind education is lost. Similar affliction exists here as well. Yeah, that's the point. Thank you.
And I want to thank you especially for bringing in the point about human complexity. I have one an excellent question actually, which has come in from someone, and I just want to place this to you. Which is to say that this idea of interwoven learning and interdisciplinary learning, which is becoming the buzzword in higher education, has the NEP 2020 with respect to schools, and therefore bringing in things like art integration. Is it geared towards that? Is it geared towards also finding a continuity in higher education?
No, I think so. I think one of the hallmarks of the national new education policy or national education policy is the recognition of the importance of interwoven learning and exposing our students to the cultural traditions of the country, and that is what I call interwoven learning. Basically, it may again, so one of those overused cliches, is all about connecting dots. I think it's basically understanding that the so-called, the malady of so-called expertise or these over-educated elites is to think that problems can fit into the boxes that you have defined for them. But that is not how it works. So in some sense, you have your own pet theories and you want to shove problems into that theoretical box and then say this is the answer. It ignores the cultural history, the political history, the habits and the traditions of the people, which are all contributed to evolving a certain practice. So in that sense, interwoven learning is all about appreciating all of these elements. And I think the new education policy goes a long way towards incorporating these elements, which, as you know very well, we had tried to do at the business school in Kriya University as well.
Thank you, Dr. Anant, and it's very, very kind of you to spare your time for us this morning or afternoon. I know you have another seminar today, which you are doing, which many of us are attending, and you have many more coming up next week. On behalf of both Macmillan and Rhapsody, Macmillan, of course, being our partner here, and Rhapsody, the organization that I founded and run, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to hearing more from you. It's good to have people who have the 30,000 feet view and who are dealing with complexity at policy making level, also sort of endorsing this art integration idea so emphatically. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Anil, I thank you so much for the opportunity. I just want to point out that, while in the last 1 week, one has been only dealing with numbers and revised estimates, budget estimates, deficit to GDP ratios, etc., it was really a wonderful opportunity to step away from all of that, at least for briefly for 10 minutes, and focus on the real issues that matter to nation building. Thank you for the opportunity in that sense.
Thank you. So that was Dr. Anant for us. Again, part of the inspiration part of this morning. This is an event for those who have joined just now. This is an event being curated by both Rhapsody and Macmillan. Rhapsody being the organization that I run, which looks at integrating art with STEM education as well as music training, and Macmillan, of course, being the giants that they are in the education and publishing space. So welcome to whoever has joined us afresh. We now move on to our third inspirational speaker, but a very quick music break. When Dr. Anant was speaking, there was this tune playing on somebody's cell phone. And that is, it's a lullaby, which is by a very famous Western classical composer called Brahms. And I wanted to say that as human beings, we already have the capacity to absorb music in the environment. It puts us in a very positive frame of mind to receive information in a better way. So the more art integration, the better it is for us, clearly. So on this note, it is a great honor to welcome our third and I would say very distinguished guest to the morning's panel. This is someone who has been instrumental in developing skill development, in shaping the course and direction of the NCERT, of heading PSSCI-EV, holds multiple distinctions and multiple awards for his service to the nation in many of these categories. This is a person who's involved in the very policies that we are discussing right now. And therefore, his views become that much more critical to us, because we would like to truly understand the perspective behind, for example, the NEP 2020, and with respect to art integration, also where the nation is thinking about this. It is therefore my pleasure to welcome Professor Vinay Mehrotra to this. Namaste. And also joining me on this panel is a dear friend, also I would say a co-conspirator in bringing sports and arts into curricula across the country. Works closely with Sports Village, also works closely with us, and of course with many governmental agencies. I would like to have Azad Khan also join us on this panel.
Thank you.
Hello to Azad, and of course, Vinayji, it's a great pleasure to have you on this panel. It's also an honor for us, for both Rhapsody as well as Macmillan. So I will just set the ball rolling, and it's over to you and Azad. The ball is basically saying, so what is the thinking behind the curricular changes in NEP 2020 in your perspective, and specifically with respect to arts and bringing the arts back into focus as part of academics? What is the thinking behind it? What's the philosophy behind it? Over to you, over to both of you.
A very good morning and namaskar. So at the outset, I would like to thank Anilji for inviting me to this conclave, which is being organized by Macmillan and Rhapsody. It's very interesting conclave because I could see it focuses on art integration, and that is what NCRT has been uh, propagating throughout these years. We are a strong advocate of STEM and STEAM now. Earlier it was STEM, and now it is STEAM. So the kind of steam that needs to be generated through this art integration, we need to look at that from the national education policy perspective. As you rightly said, and I could listen to Mr. Anant Nageshwaranji, that we need to integrate art. When we say art, it is fine art and performing arts to enhance the abilities, skills, and learning dispositions amongst our teachers as well as students. Now, why I'm focusing on teachers is because teacher, the guru, is the person who throws light on the students. And there they can differentiate between the darkness and the bright side of whatever perspective we have or we want to teach to our students. So the focus has to be on skills and abilities. Grooming the abilities is very important. As I could see you, I mean, you played the music which you heard in the ringtone immediately. Now, that is the kind of expertise that we need to develop amongst our students, the kind of knowledge. And that is why integration of vocational skills with general education skills becomes very important. It has to have a very strong foundation of general education. We can't just focus on the vocational skills. And that is why we are doing vocationalization of education. We are not promoting vocational education and training or skill training in schools. What we are focusing is on vocationalization of education. So every child should have developed that kind of knowledge. When we say knowledge, it has to be three dimensions. One is system knowledge, second is procedural knowledge, and the third is strategic knowledge. So we need to develop these kind of three dimensions of knowledge in our children. When it comes to skills, then there are cognitive skills, then practice fixation stage is there, then the autonomous stage, which you have demonstrated right now. So when the students get into the autonomous stage, then we can say they have become experts. So the application of art becomes all the more prominent when we develop these kinds of skills and abilities. So there are learning styles, as we all know. When we say it is, Fleming has said WARCs. So WARC means visual learners, auditory learners, learners who learn better through reading, and the kinesthetic learners. So we need to focus on kinesthetic learners who actually learn by doing. So every student needs to be exposed to the vocational skills. And that is what has been talked about in National Education Policy 2020. Uh, as we were discussing earlier about that integration of art, so I would like to inform you that the cultural awareness has to be spread. And that is why NEP has said we need to take the Lok Vidya, the indigenous knowledge, to our students through the craftspersons, through the experts who are there, like you. You can teach music to the students in schools, and there they would learn how to integrate music with science, technology, maths, because logical thinking or mathematical abilities need to be developed amongst us. So we have been teaching subjects in isolation, and that has been the major mistake, I would say, we have been doing. It has to be integrated. And this is another aspect which has been covered in the national education. There shouldn't be any hard separation between the curricular and co-curricular areas. There shouldn't be any hard separation within these subjects like vocational education or general education, even between art and science, between art and technology. So we need to integrate all these subjects to promote fine and performing arts so that the students, they get an informed choice of how they are going to build their career. For example, if students are good at arts, they can take career options like animator, a storyboard artist, texturing artist, cleanup artist. These are the various cameraman, photographer. There are a lot of options available in the world of work, but students are not aware of that. And as a result, they are learning because they are forced to learn. So, lifelong learning, which UNESCO has been promoting, we need to emphasize on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. What was interesting to me is the very first speaker, who was the director of IIT Madras, started by saying arts as arts, even if it doesn't integrate, arts should be there. And he's a talented musician himself, so I could understand where he was saying that with passion. And he was also saying that they made it almost sort of compulsory in IIT as well, that there needs to be. And that is why he was saying, don't wait until they get to IIT, just start doing this right from the start.
Yeah.
And then we had the second speaker, who's sitting on the Economic Advisory Council of the PMO. And he's saying economics is complexity and arts actually helps you understand complexity. So that's going from the social sciences and humanities perspective that you were talking about. And you have brought it into the very, very concretized ideas of WAT and looking at SEL and specific learning skills and learning objectives. Azad, I think I would hand this over to you. I know you had a couple of questions, which pretty much vocalize what many schools are asking.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this fantastic, seminar. Uh, it's basically, I know Dr. Mehrotra almost for a decade now. His work and all. He's one of the co-creator of National Skill Qualification Framework. The biggest work what I have felt, Dr. Mehrotra's contribution is acting as a bridge between the learners and the teachers. So this is something, Dr. Mehrotra, to you. I would like to understand. What is your feeling? What are the barriers to this art integrated learning? We have somebody like Anil, with a fantastic program, with a structure in Rhapsody. But schools are still hesitant. The education system is still hesitant to adopt this. Though it's positive, it's very positive. But what do you feel, sir? Because you are a part of NCERT, you are a part of PCIV, the government, the policy making. What do you feel, sir, is the biggest barrier to this adoption of this, integrated learning in school today?
So, Azrat, I think it's a very pertinent question, particularly when we have National Education Policy 2020, which has also emphasized that there's a need to detailing the National Skill Qualification Framework sector-wise. And that is the biggest challenge for all of us. As you rightly mentioned that I was very much involved in the development of National Vocational Education Qualifications Framework, and which later was renamed as National Skill Qualifications Framework. And basically, the reason for bringing in this kind of framework was that we have to integrate at various levels this vocational education with general education. And that was the reason behind this framework. And it's happening in more than 100 countries all over the world. So when we talk of curriculum, the teachers, the students, we need to bring about that kind of awareness amongst these stakeholders. That is the first thing, because we still think that working with hands, it's not the, I mean, the concept or dignity of labor is still not being accepted in our society. So that has been one hindrance of when we talk of curricular and co-curricular areas, when we talk of developing a curriculum which also integrates art into it, because many of those students still want to become engineers, doctors, and things like that. I would here give one example. We did a research in one of the districts of Madhya Pradesh called Sihor district. And when we interacted with the students, when we took questionnaire to them, they were not able to write properly. So we had to literally converse with them regarding filling of the questionnaires. So literacy rate was very low. The second thing, when we asked them, what would you like to become? So most of them said engineers, doctors, army, Air Force, Navy. Then we said, if you are not become one of these, what you will become? They said teachers. So teacher is the last option in our country. That's very unfortunate. Whereas if you look at Finland, Switzerland, Germany, and all, teacher is the first option. People want to become teachers. So that has to be, we need to change that kind of mindset. That is one thing. When we ask them, okay, if you want to become a doctor, how you would become? They said, if I score good marks, I'll become a doctor. Now, this is the kind of awareness our students have. They are not aware of the competitive exams for all these. So when they passed class 12, they they get into a host of suggestions, opinions from your neighbors, from other stakeholders, and they are into in a swimming pool where they don't know how to swim. Now, this is the kind of education system that we have developed over the years. We need to change that. So, sensitization of children teachers with regard to guidance and counseling has to be there. So, that is the first thing that we need to take care of. So, then we told them, we assembled them in a particular ground and told them about the variety of a plethora of options or career choices available in the world of work, including DJ, VJ, and all those things we told them, beauty and wellness. So most of the girls, they said, I would like to become a hairdresser. I would like to become a beautician. I want to start my own salon. Now, see, we have not been able to link our education with the aspirations of the students. We have been forcing them to opt for the choices that we are providing. Like we have opened a restaurant of South Indian dishes in Punjab and saying instead of eating parathas or makhan with paratha or dahi, you eat dosa and idli. This is what we have been forcing through our education system. So we need to give plethora of choices, give them right guidance so that they can prepare their own dish and say, I'm enjoying this. That is the kind of basket of vocational courses or general education courses that, and here it is very important, and this has also been talked about in national education policy, that we need to have an academic credit bank system where students can accumulate their credits, they can transfer those credits, and also get exemption for the credits that for the courses that they have completed. So there's a lot of work to be done in our country in terms of bringing about that kind of reforms that we are looking forward through the National Education Policy 2020. And all these things have already been talked about in the National Education Policy 86. And we have not been able to implement most of those recommendations. So we are starting afresh. Let's hope for the best and see that we can bring about that kind of reforms that are very much needed in order to prepare our students for the 21st century skills.
So I think we have time for one more question, Azad, if you have it. Otherwise, I'm burning with one question to ask.
Please, go ahead, Anil.
So, there's been a sort of contrast in the conversations this morning, Vinayji. So we started with, of course, with the director of IIT saying, don't assess. He said, in terms of all these creative skills, social, emotional skills, which used to be previously taught at home, and our families were set up for these kinds of things, and now the school has taken over. And he specifically said, look, I mean, these are things that every human being needs to have. This is what makes a human being complete. But if you bring assessment into it and you bring evaluation into it, then again, there will be a backlash, because it'll be like you're doing it just for the sake of the grade, whereas the actual learning will go away. I tried to counter that. I'm not the government, but I tried to counter that by saying, I think more about keeping people in track, not to tell them they're good or bad, but basically to say that you should not look at a child only in a unidimensional way. You must be able to look at the child in a holistic way. So am I right or am I wrong? That's my question to you.
See, there could be very different perspectives and school of thoughts on these. And we cannot say that somebody is right or wrong, because every aspect has its own pros and cons. assessment has to be there, and it has to be continuous assessment. We are working on learning outcomes based curriculum. Why? Because we have all the years talking about input based curriculum, and we were not bothered much about the outcome. And here I will like to quote one story that two friends were standing and they were talking about their dog. The one friend was having a dog called Tommy. Said, so the friend asked, "What have you done all this pandemic time?" Said, "I taught my dog to whistle." So, for this very interesting thing you have done. So then he asked the Tommy, "Okay, you whistle." The Tommy can't whistle because dogs cannot whistle. He said, he's not whistling. He said, "You didn't hear me properly. I said I taught him. I didn't say he learned it." Now,
Very good.
that is the biggest problem with our system. We have been teaching all the years, but we never said that my students have learned all this. For example, music. So we never said that my students can play these kinds of music. Elvis Presley and those who have created music. Now that is the biggest problem with our system. The second thing is we need to focus on competency based assessment. We have been doing evaluation, assessment of knowledge, but not focusing on skills. So when we say competency based evaluation, that means knowledge, skills, and attitude. These three things should come in our evaluation system. And that is why there's a whole lot of debate going on in terms of assessment and evaluation. CCE, you must have heard about it, CBSE promoted in the schools. It became a lot of hard work for the teachers, but the whole spirit was not implemented as it should have been done. And that is why it got a setback. So if we are doing reforms in patchworks, then it's not going to bring any result. And that is what we need to look at. So assessment and evaluation actually helps us in understanding what the learner has learned. It has to be continuous. It should not be one-time assessment. So when we say assessment of learning, for learning, and as learning, these are the three aspects of assessment that we need to implement. And evaluation should not be like this pass or fail. It
Correct.
should be you are competent or you are not yet competent. Not saying you are incompetent. The moment you say incompetent, that means you are becoming judgmental. So the evaluation should not be judgmental. It should lead to encouragement of the learner to learn more. So curiosity to learn should be there. Like it has been said in the Delors Commission report, International Commission on Education, 1995. It says learning the treasure within. So the treasure is within you. And we have to help as teachers to find that treasure. So that is important.
That's beautifully put, sir. And one of our panelists has also sort of qualified this in a nice way and said qualitative assessment. I think that's also what you were saying. It does not have to be quantitative, but we are looking at. So thank you, Aparna, for that. Looking at continuous assessments in a qualitative and not in
So
a.
it has to be qualitative assessment rather than quantitative. And we have been busy in that. 99%. And the person doesn't have those communication skills. So what about those marks which he or she has scored in language? Doesn't make any sense if he or she is not able to communicate well. Like you could apply that music through the piano and show that this is how the application. So applied learning needs to be focused. Applied assessment need to be focused, and that is why we need to focus on competency based assessment.
Brilliantly put, sir. I think, Azad, I have to thank you for working with me to get Vinayji on this panel, because this has been a very rich 20. I mean, I wish I was a student. I would be taking furious notes, because he made so many very important points which are actually elucidating what's there in the policy, especially in terms of not only looking at in terms of how to structure this. So what are the specific skill sets it's touching upon, but also how to evaluate this. So if you're doing applied learning, then applied evaluation has to be commensurate with that. And I think that is what he was referring to. I'm very sure many of the schools have taken a lot of notes on this. Vinayji, it is our honor and pleasure, both on behalf of Macmillan as well as Rhapsody, to have had you on this morning panel. It's added tremendous richness, sir, and I know you're a very busy person. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for this time that you've given us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for helping coordinate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
so
the
much.
support. It's been a real pleasure to
Thank
be
you.
there.
So we move on now to our very esteemed partners, Macmillan. Macmillan has been a friend, a guide, a mentor. I want to specifically mention Vandana of Macmillan for having been a partner in crime and doing this. But before we move to the implementation, so this morning session was on inspiration. So we had an inspiration from IIT, from the Economic Advisory Committee, and of course from Vinayji, who has been looking at NCERT and PSSCIEV. So we looked at inspiration in multiple forms on art as humane, and also art in terms of assessments, which is going to be elucidated a little more because I know many of us are burning with questions both for and against. But before we move into the implementation panel with Macmillan and over to Vandana, we're going to have a child perform something which is very interesting in terms of art integration. So over to Taran and to the team to present a little bit of Taran. And Vandana, since I know you're already on the panel, you're getting entry music from a child. So over to Taran.
So now we're gonna play the song Raghuvamsa Sudha, which is a popular song in the Ragam Kadana Kudukalam. So yeah.
Hello. Yes. Thank you, Taran. I wish we could ask you to explain the physics behind that. So after this session, let's move on to the implementation of art integration. I'm Vandana Juneja, and on behalf of Macmillan Education, a very good morning to all our audience on Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere. Thank you, Anil and Rhapsody, for conceptualizing this event, and the entire Macmillan team for taking it to schools, teachers. As Professor Bhaskar said, do something other than curriculum. So while Macmillan is a curriculum publisher, we go beyond this, and that's where our strength is. Throughout the year, we try to do interesting stuff with schools, teachers, and students so that they enjoy their teaching and learning, whether it's around life skills, it's around theater, storytelling, or physical and mental health programs. You know, recently in a brand survey, we had teachers say some beautiful things like, whenever I do something new, I trust Macmillan because I know they will always have my back. Someone else said, I studied from Macmillan and now I'm using Macmillan to teach. And that is what makes us strong. Regarding today's AIL session, I would put it in one sentence as art integrated learning is intelligence having fun. That is a little modification of a quote by Einstein, who said creativity is intelligence having fun, and that is what AIL is. We've all heard the professors speaking on the NEP's vision of AIL, and truly AIL will become a guiding principle for teaching in the classroom, for highlighting the significance of our rich culture, whether it is in Barley art or it is in the different performing theater arts. And this kind of the entire putting arts into learning is what Rhapsody and Macmillan have been working together on, whether it is in developing lesson plans, which will facilitate a teacher to use them easily in the classroom, because we know how much teachers are striving to meet outcomes, use everything that is there and complete the syllabus. So when you give them something which allows them to be creative and yet a strong framework, then it works on the field. We've integrated AIL in lesson plans in a new solution called Altura, which is NEP aligned and is a hybrid solution which will advance learning and teaching using resources and assessments. Without talking much more on Altura, I will now take the session to one of our global experts, Ms. Jody Scissors, who is a digital learning professional, a consultant, writer, and the founder of Paper Planes. Based in Washington, she has a demonstrated history of language immersion teaching as well as STEAM. The span of her work stretches from primary, secondary, and she has developed her STEAM programs for 21st century learners while integrating technology with fidelity. So Jody Scissors, over to you, please. I would request you to turn on your camera. And begin the session. Anil, is Jody visible?
Hi, Vandana, I think some problem with Jody's connectivity.
Okay.
Can we invite the other panelists so that we
Sure,
can
no problem.
complete that? Thank you.
So we'll begin with Aparna. Aparna is a dear friend of Macmillan, firstly. She's a storyteller, an accomplished coach, a teacher trainer. She's reached out to thousands of educators. And, you know, she's a true embodiment of STEAM because she's also a software engineer. She uses the power of storytelling to create immersive experiences. And believe me, you cannot look away when she's in action. She founded the Kid and Parent Foundation and the Story Triangle. She works across education, skilling, and corporate sectors and is highly awarded. Over to you, Aparna, for your session, and give us a little demo, surely, of art integrated learning.
Thank you, Vandana. What a lovely, lovely morning. What a great way to open a weekend. Thank you, Anil, for those opening remarks and your wonderful, magical fingers come into action. Vandana, thank you. You put it right. I think Macmillan is inspiring not just because they have been here for as long as my grandfather can remember, but also because they continue to stay current and relevant. My brush with Anil goes back a long, long way, where I shared stage with him once on a STEAM conference, incidentally. So thank you for this opportunity. All right. So, as you all know, the morning has been invigorating. There have been Bhaskar sir and the rest of them have been giving us a lot of insights into the making of art in education and why we need it. So let me give you a more practitioner's approach into how we can do it. I love doing that because I love listening to stories. I love telling stories. I love to get my hands and feet dirty in storytelling. So I'm going to do a small demo. I've chosen this particular story to tell to you. It's about a little butterfly. And the reason I've chosen a butterfly as a protagonist in my story is because the emerging of this butterfly in many ways is metaphorical to the emergence of art in STEAM. What I would like each of you to do is to sit back, relax, and put on your seatbelts to come away with me to Storyland. I'd like all of you to close your eyes for a moment and visualize yourself back in the elementary classes. I've chosen elementary simply because it is more, it's more widespread and its relevance will be felt by one and all. So STEAM is not limited to elementary, neither is it limited to middle school. As Mr. Bhaskar said this morning in IIT Madras, art belongs everywhere, doesn't it? All right. So let me begin where every story begins. Once upon a time, deep in the jungles of India, out came a monkey. I've lost my mom. Hush, hush, little monkey, don't you cry. I'll help you find her, said Butterfly. Let's give it a think. How big is she? Oh, she's big, my mom. Bigger than me. Ah, bigger than you say. I think I've seen your mom. And so with a scratch and a scratch and a flitty fly, off they went, hoppity hi. Well, could it be she? No. How could it be? My mama's knees aren't this big. Her knees are small. And most importantly, she loves to live on trees. Ah, live on trees, you say. I think I've seen your mom. And so with a scratch and a scratch and a flitty fly, off they went, hoppity hi. Well, could it be she? No. How could it be? My mum doesn't look for eggs. And anyway, she has more legs. Ah, more legs, you say. I think I've seen your mum. And so with a scratch and a flitty fly, off they went, hoppity high. Well, could it be she? No, how could it be? My mum doesn't eat a fly. And she loves to jump up high. Ah, jump up high. I think I've seen your mum. And so with a scritch and a scratch and a flitty fly, off they went, hoppity high. Well, could this be she? Blub, 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 blub. No. How could it be? My mom doesn't live in water, you see. And she looks a lot like me. Ah, she looks a lot like you. Why didn't you say? You see, my children don't look like me. They look like this. And then they look like this. And then they look like me. But she looks like you say. I think I've seen your mum. And so with a scritch and a scratch and a flitty fly, off they went, hoppity high. Well, could it be she? Yes, indeed. That is my mum. And so, Mama and little monkey got together and gave each other a great big hug. And like all good mamas, she looked at baby monkey and she said, "Are you hungry?" And on that day, little butterfly saved the day. And that is how this story ends. With a scritch and a scratch and a flitty fly, off they went, happily high-five. And high-five to all of you listeners and people who watched and liked the story. If you were back in your elementary years, you would have enjoyed the story, because this story would have been a precursor to the question, and so tell me, which insect do you think has its little ones looking different from itself? Why do you think so? You see, and when they ask why do you think so, there is a great deal of thought that's going on in the minds of these little children, for they wonder, why is it that an egg is laid, and why is it that a worm comes out of it, and what happens when that worm eats leaves and more leaves, and finally what happens when it becomes a chrysalis and then a butterfly emerges. And also, you could talk about not just the biology of this, but also chemistry in terms of metamorphosis, in terms of physical changes and chemical changes, and you can take it anywhere you go. You can use the story to talk about the physics of monkeys jumping from trees to trees, and how is it that they're off the ground, why is it that an elephant can't jump from a tree whereas a monkey can, and so it's the possibilities are endless. And then if I were in a classroom that had elementary children in it, I might Indianize the life cycle of the butterfly, and maybe I could sing a little song like this. Aha! Ta-na-na, ta-na-na-na-na. Ta-na-na, ta-na-na-na-na. There was once a little egg. It was round and very quiet. Aha! Then it opened up a crack. Came a little green worm. Ta-na-na, ta-na-na-na-na. Ta-na-na, ta-na-na-na-na. Caterpillar it was called. Aha! All it did was eat some leaves. Soon it curled and went to sleep. In a few days, a lovely creature was born. Ah, ta-na-na, ta-na-na-na-na. Ta-na-na, ta-na-na-na-na. Ta-na-na, ta-na-na-na-na. I hope you like the arts in science. Aha! All right. So that's a little glimpse into how you might want to talk about the science in your class. Now, what really happens when you integrate arts in your class? So what I would like to say is you create an ACE classroom. You become an ACE. Now, what is ACE, ACE in this? I love to use acronyms. You see, I come from an engineering world. So I love to keep things in threes. So ACE is what very simply, this is a practitioner's perspective. So what happens is the ACE is an acronym for A, the moment you bring the art, no matter what the art form is, it could be visual arts, it could be movement, it could be, it could be a musical instrument, music, it could be a story, which has visual props, which has voice, it could be any performing arts or visual arts. And what happens is the A stands for attention grabbing. It's totally attention grabbing. You cannot possibly, and I'm not saying this because I am a storyteller. I'm saying I'm not marketing, myself. It's simply because the science, the neuroscience of arts has it that it puts the listener into a trance where the neurons in the minds of the listener is mirrored with the neurons of the minds of the teller or the performer. So it's attention grabbing and you can't help it. You've just got to pay attention. So that's the A. Now, what's the C? Now, the C is it totally connects, if you plan well, it connects the concept to the lesson at hand. Now, the question for all of us is, how much are we ready to try to connect arts to the concept? How ready are we teachers to actually push the bounds of our own creativity to see whether we can integrate something that's attention grabbing, that connects the concept to to the arts? And the third thing is the engagement itself. Imagine the engagement in your class when you have something like this. You can continue this into a role play, a drama. You can have a group play where you can have, all the animals of the story can come alive in your classroom. Imagine the energy and engagement in your class. And if you have this kind of engagement, don't you think learning is going to be a natural outcome of this? And that's the reason I present to you arts in STEAM and our very need to start looking at it from the earliest of years and not stopping anywhere in between until we are adults as old as you and me, and we continue to think, create, and infuse arts in our business as well. So with that, I think my time is up, but I'm happy to listen up to what's going on. I will put my specs on so that I can see what's going on.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you so much. That was fun, and that's what we wanted it to be. And of course, with the foundations of learning behind it. Now let's get some perspectives from the school management. And who better than our next expert, Mr. Georgie Paul, who's the principal of Benchmark International School, Tirur, Kerala. He's also the Joint Secretary of the Confederation of the State Sahodaya. He's the General Secretary of the Malappuram Sahodaya. Mr. Georgie Paul has been associated with teacher training and Macmillan for many years. He's also an academic consultant, a psychologist, and a career coach. He has such a vast repertoire of educational development expertise that his calendar is always full, and we had to struggle to get even a comma in. Thank you, Mr. Paul, for joining us today, and over to you for giving us a perspective on how schools will take art-integrated learning forward.
Thank you, Vandana ma'am. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with these eminent panelists. And it's a kind of suicide attempt to take the platform after Aparna ma'am. And maybe this is the time for the participants to turn to the coffee cups and water bottles, since you were not able to do that. And here I don't have any equipments, any instruments, so I'll share my screen. I have a couple of slides to show you. Hope you can see my screen. Shall I present? What would you please, Vandana ma'am, would you please tell me whether you can see my screen or not? Hope it is visible to you all. See here, when I start talking about the implementation part, I just would like to connect what is given in the 4th chapter of NEP. You all know that chapter 4 starts with these four terms. Learning should be holistic, integrated, enjoyable, and engaging. How can you make it engaging? The children should be engaged in the learning, and it should be enjoyable for them. And we can integrate art, sports, storytelling, everything there, so that there'll be holistic development in children. This is what is focused. And again, the next, here you can see the chapter 4, paragraph 5 says, curriculum content will be reduced in each subject. And at the end, you can see how would the classroom be, learning be, teaching and learning will be conducted in a more interactive manner. Questions will be encouraged, and classroom sessions will regularly contain more fun. How can we create the fun in the classroom? How can that be creative in the classroom? How would the children be creative in the classroom? Collaborative, in a team, together with others, and exploratory. And that will lead to experiential learning. Again, 4.5 in NEP says, in all stages, experiential learning will be adopted. And art integration is one of the strategies for experiential learning. And NEP says, chapter 4.7, art integration will definitely make the classrooms happy classrooms, and the learning, joyful learning for the children. It's not just that happy classroom and joyful learning. Along with that, Indian ethos, Indian art, Indian culture will be included, and that will imbibe the Indian ethos. So this is the advantage. So here, joyful classrooms will be created, so the children will be engaged, and they'll be involved, and they'll love learning, and they'll be happy throughout the learning process, and there'll be many takeaways for them. And then along with that, they'll have more knowledge about India, Indian art, Indian literature, and all. So this is holistic development. Here, the left brain and right brain spheres. And the left brain functions are more of with academics, and the right brain with creativity. And if we can mix these two, it will be holistic, whole brain development and whole brain thinking. So that is the possibility with this. So National Education Policy recommendations were released on 29th July 2020. Before that, on 14th May, in CBSE schools, I'm representing a CBSE school. I'm representing a Sahodaya, which is aligned with the CBSE initiatives and policies. A circular was issued on 14th May 2020, circular number 33. And in that circular, here, the art integration, art integrated project, art education, and reporting of all these things, how to do, what to do with this, all have been listed. And all these have been well explained. And an art integration manual was released by CBSE in 2019, before these NEP recommendations were out. And art integration guidelines were released by NCRT in September 2019. And I told you about this art integration circular, which was issued by CBSE on 14th May. And this circular talks about 4 things: about arts education, and the second about art integrated learning, art integration, and third, art integrated project, and art integrated Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat project, and reporting of all these things to CBSE. So that is what is being followed in our schools. And the first one is arts education. We listen to beautiful violin, the music, and the performing art. And here, art education is the same art education that we had during our time. I remember during my school days, we had music periods, drawing periods, and we had stitching and embroidery works, and we had special teachers appointed for that, art teachers who were skilled and educated and qualified. Through those teachers, those periods were given during our time, and even now we give this. We have music teachers in our schools, and they give music training. And we have dance teachers in our schools, and we give dance coaching, dance training, and performing art, drawing, craft. All these are given by that specialists, those who are trained and qualified. And the children get this. So the purpose, what is the objective? To promote this skill, to enhance the artistic skill, to promote that particular art. So qualified, competent people are enough and required. And is it mandatory? Since it is mandatory, we have been giving in our schools. For the classes up to 10 in a CBSE school, it is compulsory. So how many periods to be reserved? 2 periods per week per class for art education. Visual art, performing art, any of these art can be done. Even culinary art can be given there. So we have been following that in our schools. And the second point is art integration. This is different from art education. So it's not the art educators who are giving this. It's not the artists who are giving this class. Instead, this art integration is being done by the teachers, subject teachers. And it's an approach to teaching. And through this approach, students construct and demonstrate understanding through an art form. Why art form? Because it is interesting. You might have noticed, when did you get the maximum comments in the chat box? It was during the performances, right? More than the speakers, the performers get the applauses. And you were curiously watching what was happening in Aparna ma'am's screen. You may not be that curious with me here, because that is the difference. So if a teacher uses any of the art form to teach the concept to be taught, that will give happiness in the classroom. Children will be happy, and they'll be involved, and they'll be engaged. And that is what is the reason for this art integration. And here, this art integration, in this art integration, art becomes the basis of teaching learning process. And at the last point, you can see I've marked it: holistic, joyful, and experiential learning will be possible. This is what NEP recommended: holistic learning, and that is possible with this art. And joyful learning, that is what recommended there. And experiential learning, it will definitely be possible if you can include art. And for that, is it compulsory? Yeah. CBSE says it must be integrated. Art must be integrated with the teaching and learning process in all academic subjects from classes 1 to 12 in school education. So up to 12th standard, it is compulsory. And what should be, and should all be like an artist, a professional dancer or singer? Should the teachers go for the training? No, it's not required. Here it clearly says, the circular clearly says, the objective of art integrated learning is not to promote arts and skills of arts. We have art education for promoting art and skills of arts, and this art integrated learning is not to promote art and skills of art, but to use art as a tool to teach other subjects. Here art is used as a tool. So subject teachers can use it. They don't have to go for any special training, any professional coaching. They can do this with any simple art forms in the classrooms. The only reason is it will definitely arouse the curiosity. And that curiosity can be maintained. And if the children are involved and engaged in the learning, if it is their business, if they feel like it's their business, they'll never look away from the system, the process. So there will be high quality in learning, right? This is what is, anything can be used. There's no stipulation that this cannot be used. There's no recommendation that this can be used. No. There are visual arts, performing arts, digital arts, and they're very smart in digital art, right? And gave me the mobile applications, designing, or PowerPoint, videography, filming. All these are digital arts and literary art, creative writing. Any of these art forms can be used. And here are some recommendations like role play, video making, filmmaking, photography, slideshow, PPTs, designing through Photoshop and other, visiting historical places and making documentaries, sketching, sculpture, clay modeling, dance performance, creating art reservoir, jewelry making, paper quilling, paper mache, beads, grains, art exhibition, anything. And if you have something else, not any other item other than what is given there, there's an option. Any other. If you feel it and find it suitable for teaching your concept, you can use any art. That freedom is given to the teachers, and no one will intrude, no one will interfere, no one will question, but we must include any art form. The third point that we have been doing in our schools is art integrated project as per the CBSE recommendations. We have art integrated project for the classes up to 10. In classes 9 and 10, we have a project, at least one project in each subject. So it is subject-wise projects. In classes 1 to 8, it's transdisciplinary project. Transdisciplinary project, only one project is required. And the marks that they get for this will be reflected in the internal assessment. 1 to 8, they'll get the marks. So it's part of the academics. They get marks at the end of the academic year. When the total marks are calculated, they'll get the marks for this art integrated project. Classes 9 and 10, yeah, they'll also get, because this is subject enrichment activities. The art project, the art integrated project that they do in each subject will be considered as subject enrichment activity, and they'll get that mark. In class 10, 5 marks for subject enrichment activity, and that will be reflected in the progress report, in the result, final result, and they'll get it. And any Indian art can be used here. And the purpose is not to make them artists, but to make this concept clear for them. And the artists, those who have the artistic talent will definitely develop that skill as well. And now you can see there is one more project, Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat project. One of the projects that they do from class 1 to 10 must be integrated with the art form of a paired state. So we have been paired up with other states, and we have been paired up with other states. And each and every state is being paired up. It's not with the one which is sharing the boundaries. Tamil Nadu is not being paired up with Kerala. Kerala is with Himachal. Tamil Nadu is with Jammu Kashmir. Karnataka is with Uttarakhand. And this is Haryana is with Telangana. You see, that we must know each other. Then only we'll have that true respect to each other, the culture. In a diversified world, we must respect each and every one. We must know what is the lifestyle there, what are the provisions there, and that is possible through this art integrated project. One of the projects that they do must be integrated with any art form of that paired up state, and that is also being done. And they'll do this in groups, and it clearly says, and teachers need not to be panicked and worried. It should not be too much pro art. It should be an art which can be done by the students and which can be guided by the teacher. The simple and doable one only be needed. Relevant and appropriate strategies for the assessment will be done by the teacher. And see, this is how things are done. And almost all the schools are almost completed in senior classes, because the mark will be uploaded. In class 10 marks means that 5 mark that is included in 20 internal marks, that will be uploaded at the time of collecting the marks through the portal by the board. Class 10 internal marks will be collected every year, so it will have to be done. And along with that, it's very serious that we have to report these things to CBSE as well. We have art education in our schools, yeah. We have art integrated learning, art integrated project, but all these things to be reported through a portal. Now we have a portal, Kala Sedu portal, art education and art integrated learning portal. Through this portal, we have to upload. We have to get into the portal, logging with our credentials, and we have 5 parts to be ended. One is part 1, name of the art teachers and their details. This is the first one. We have to enter this. Part 2, the classes and timing. For each class, 2 periods to be given, and what is the time on which day. Third part, in what are the activities performed, how many students participated from each class. And fourth one is art integrated learning up to 12th standard. Which are the classes, topics, subjects, and which are the art activities selected. Some recommendations and suggestives are there, can be chosen from there, and any other form can also be opted. And the fifth one, what are the projects to be done and completed. Projects in up to class 10. So these 5 parts to be reported to CBSE to download the hall tickets for the class 10 and 12. Otherwise, if you don't complete this before that stipulated time, since no deadline is given, but still before downloading the hall ticket, this process has to be completed. Then only the art education and art integration and learning confirmation number will be available for us, and that number to be kept, and that has to be ended before downloading the hall ticket. So this has made compulsory for us, and there are some do's and do not suggested. And this is the one: assess the process, not the product. If you assess the product, they'll go for the perfection, and all are not artists, and they cannot be performers as well. And if the best performer is only be awarded, then others will go behind, they'll be reluctant, and even the teachers will have no interest in it. So we'll not be assessing, the teachers in schools will not be assessing the product, but the process will be assessed, and every child will be recognized. And again, there is one more: in do not comment on the artistic quality of the representation. In a classroom where 30 students are studying, all cannot be good singers, dancers, performers, and they'll not be good artists, and they cannot do the sculpture or any such works alike. So if we comment the artistic quality, majority of them will go behind. Instead, if we can encourage them, appreciate them with their process or initiation and interest, that will definitely be taken to the next level. And we'll never compare one student with another. We'll never compare the artwork of one student with another. And see, this is pairing. These are the paired states under Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat. Anyway, all these will give us a very good opportunity. If we teach today's children as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. This is what John Dewey said. And you cannot use the same strategies you used to for yesterday's children. The children who are in your classes are different, and let us apply the new strategies. Let this be a new strategy, so that they'll be very happy here. I just would like to connect one thing. This is the amygdala, part of the midbrain, and this amygdala encodes the emotional aspects. And next to that is hippocampus. This encodes and transfers new explicit memories to long-term memory. These two are very close to each other. If children are very happy and satisfied, and if they are very enthusiastic and energetic, there'll be no effort for the amygdala to process, regulate their emotions. But if they are not happy, if they are irritated, if they have no happiness in the classroom, if they don't like the subject, teacher, teaching, learning, syllabus, school, then definitely this amygdala will be struggling too much to regulate or process the emotional imbalance and fluctuation. That will definitely affect the learning. So learning will be thwarted, learning will be blocked, because this is so close, hippocampus. So if they are happy, that's why neuroscientists, behavioral scientists, medical practitioners, and psychologists, they all believe happy students perform well. Let the children be happy, and this is one of the best reasons for us to involve, engage, and make the children happy in the classroom. That's all. That's why. So we will in schools follow this with true spirit, and that will never be a burden for the children. That will never be a burden for the parents or the teachers, but that will be a happy feelings for everyone involved in the field. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgie Paul, sir. I think that was wonderful, especially the last part about having happy children. And of course, having happy children will come when the teachers are happy. Yes, this is an activity which should be focusing only on children having fun and not on assessment as much. Although the teachers would need, like you said, the right objectives in mind when they begin with this. So before we go ahead, sir, and Aparna, if you could just switch on your camera. We have questions coming in already from the audience. Georgie Paul, sir, the first question is for you. Sir, can we choose any dance form or anything else with a paired up state?
Or anything, any art, it's clearly mentioned, any art of the paired state can be connected with that. And if there is a topic, there is a project given for the students, and if it is connected with any topic while linking with another topics, in up to class 8, it can be a transdisciplinary. Transdisciplinary means anything can be there. More subjects can be there. More subjects can be linked in it, and more art can be linked in it, and even an art from a paired state can also be linked in it. And even for the art integration, it is not required to choose anything from your own state. Any Indian art can be chosen, and let that be so specific. When we go in search of something from a paired state, we'll have clarity, we'll know more about that state. If Tamil Nadu is being paired up with Jammu Kashmir this year. It may not be Jammu Kashmir next year. Now the state will be given to you, because then the children will get more and more about other states, their culture, their style. So any art form can be chosen, and they'll also come in search of our art forms. And you just connect with what is in Tamil Nadu. And if the people from Jammu Kashmir, if they come in search of some art forms, they'll get Pongal art. It's connected with that. And Pongal food, Pongal song, Pongal dance in Kerala, Onam, and Pookalam, all these are arts. Different arts are there, in connection with that. In all these states, I don't mention all these, because that what can be connected with the south and north. Yeah.
So, one more question from Preeti Upadhyay. Is the evaluation system going to change so that these subjects of dance, painting, etc. are going to be given the same weightage as physics, chem, maths in senior classes?
And actually, in senior classes, there's no art education. It's not required. Here this art will not be assessed as art. It is a part of this academics. So, say if they do this art integrated project, they'll get only 5 marks for that. And if they have art integrated learning, the concept will be clear for them. That is why they used it. And it's not for their dance they get the mark. It's not for their music they get the mark. It's for the concept they'll get the mark. The concept, you see, the CBSE initiative is that every year 10% case-based question will be added. This year 10% is added. Next year it will be 20%, and by 25-26 it will be 60%. So this 10% hike will be there till that becomes 60. So when a question paper is designed with 60% of the questions are case-based questions, it will not be the content knowledge that they need, but the conceptual clarity, right? So that will be possible with this art integration, because children will be very much interested in the activities and they'll be interested in the learning. And we do call that some subjects are very difficult. It's because they don't have interest, so they don't pay the attention. If they pay attention, all this will be captured by them, and they're smarter than us, right? The old generation. And that interest will be created in the classroom. That will be generated. That's why we use this art. Yeah. And storytelling, as Aparna ma'am did, storytelling is one of the suggested experiential learning activities. See how curious we were. We followed. She had some tricks and techniques, right? And we couldn't take our eyes away from her. This is the attraction. And storytelling is old. It is as old as human being. But it's a new pedagogy. A teacher in the 21st century must be a good storyteller. Yeah, right. Right, ma'am. Yeah, true.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Aparna, a question for you here. We are looking at integrating techniques like storytelling. Is there a body of research which shows the efficacy of art integrated learning or storytelling in learning?
So it's a matter of concern that there are not enough governing bodies which have, especially in our country, which have yet done a lot of research. And I'm very happy to see the case study that Joji sir has just put up, because he was able to give us implementational metrics on how things were and how it has panned. So in bits and pockets, internationally there are some funding bodies who have invested, and the efficacy, there are multiple studies which say that the academic outcomes have increased by more than 11% in some places. The kind of the happiness quotient has been upped. So there are independent bodies which have these evidence. However, I think now is a great time for us to discuss, if policymakers are listening, to see whether we can take on some research, especially because today we're talking of not just art, but every panelist today, including Joji sir, has talked about how we can use our cultural art forms. And the fact that we have got combinational states, each of which comes with a different heritage and culture, how we can use our own treasure trove of art in education and see what we can draw from it as evidence and its efficacy thereof.
Sure, thank you. So Joji, so one more question, although I think you've already answered it. Can local art and folk art be introduced, and from which level?
Any level. And it's not for teaching them that topic or art, but to teach your concept. You can choose any art, even informal art. Let them be the lyricists, let them be the choreographers, let them be the composer. Doesn't matter. Even with a tone, a tune, you can make some lyrics with that. It's possible from any level. Just this is the purpose. Here art integration is not to promote art or artistic skills. That is for in making them involved, and that too with an interest. Only that is there, and so that the learning will be easy. And yeah.
And to just add to that, this is to expose them to the culture. So eventually, we will learn to live in a country where we're appreciative of the culture, the art, and the education that comes out of it. So
that is also given there in the NEP recommendations, that will be enrooted in Indian ethos, Indian culture, right from the ECC stage. Even in the ECC stage, Indian art, Indian local poetry, music, stories, all these things will be incorporated. And we are waiting for the national curriculum frameworks to come. And all these recommendations will be there in the curriculum framework also. And I could see some questions there. Is it compulsory in classes 11 and 12? Art integration is compulsory. Art integration is recommended. Art integrated projects are not required. But as someone said, if you want to choose art can be chosen as a subject in class 11 and 12. And hereafter, there will be no separation, hard separation between art, science, humanities, commerce. And there will be no separation between academic, occasional. There will be no separation between the co-curricular, curricular, extracurricular activities. All these things will be available for the children, and they'll have more freedom to choose. Whatever is their interest can be chosen. That is there.
And also, just to add, about the folk art question, Vandana, to whichever ma'am has asked, just to say that using folk art and folk song is possibly the easiest way. So, it's very simple. It was invented for a reason. It was because simple people who were not artistically inclined, were the ones who indulged in folk music, in, like Gondart, Worli. You mentioned Worli today in the morning. So that's a very easy art form. All it needs is lines. Gond needs dots and colors. So they're all very simple art forms. Folk music is very simple. All you need is one, chapalakatti or one, quick jingle, and you've got your folk beats on. So it's a very easy way, and therefore it should become the earliest of ages.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you, sir. I wish we could continue with this because there are more questions pouring in. Unfortunately, we've got only 10 minutes. And there's something very interesting that we want to also announce. So please stay here, but I'll continue announcing. As a prelude to this conclave, we had invited teachers all India to send in lesson plans where they had integrated art. Because we know CBSE has been conducting sessions, Macmillan has been conducting sessions on this. So we thought, let's see what the teachers have absorbed and what is it that they're doing even prior to NEP's guidelines, because we know teachers are always looking for new ways to engage the learners. And we received close to 300 entries in just 3 weeks. And we set up a jury. So I'll just take you through that, through some of the work that was done by the teachers. Just give me a second. Okay. So let's see what our teachers came up with. Can you all see my screen? Aparna, can you see my screen?
I can.
Hello?
Yes, I can see that, Vandana. Wow.
Okay. So the campaign was called Teachers Are Artists, Unleash Your Creativity. And the teachers developed lesson plans, which they submitted. And we thought we'd select the top 10, but we ended up selecting so many more. And sure enough, we'll be sending out some creativity hampers to all the teachers who participated. The jury was practicing teachers. We had Mrs. Divya Kapoor, headmistress of Pragyan School, Greater Noida, Mrs. Mehnaz Akbar Mehdi, again Pragyan School, Noida, and we had Mrs. Ritu Aluwalia, who's from Ramjas School, RK Delhi. So firstly, we'd like to acknowledge a school, Silver Oak School, Punjab. And from this school, we received 30 entries. So obviously, it was the management which was encouraging the teachers to take part. Out of the 30 entries, we selected the top 3. We had Miss Anju Khanna, who in the category of 6 to 8, on the topic different parts of a plant. We had Mrs. Suman Lata for maths on subtraction in the K2 category, and Manmehak Sidhu 3 to 5 on English, adverbs and its types. Thank you very much, teachers. And sure enough, after the conclave, we are going to be putting up your entries on Facebook so that everybody can take a look at them. Thank you, Silver Oak School. Thank you, Principal Man. And for now, for the 10 entries that we selected, as we've been talking about taking local art culture, you'll be surprised to see the places from where we've got these entries. We got a very innovative one from Ms. Della Susan, Excelsior English School, Kerala, for her integrated environmental science lesson. Ms. Shruti from Banariaman Public School, Tamil Nadu. Again, science, journey of a seed to a plant. Ms. Meenal Gupta on biology, on human circulatory system. She's from Haryana, Jiva Public School. Ms. Lakshmi Bowler from Sharda Vidya Niketan Public School, Mangalore, on English. Ms. Tanaz Jivasa from Navajbai Tata English Medium School, Navsari, which was on recognizing flowers. You can see the pictures of the teachers on the right. We have Ms. Valari Gharpure from Nagpur on digestion in humans. Ms. Manjula Srikumar from Nivedita Vidyaniketan, Kerala, K2 on social science to be independent, which was on civic duties. Ms. Asmat Khan from Jammu and Kashmir, SRM Welkin Higher Secondary School on Lucy the Cow. Ms. Sajita Mithun from Chinmaya Vidyalaya, Ernakulam, Kerala on Let's Learn Grammar. Mr. Rajesh Dalvi from Reliance Foundation School, Khalapur, Maharashtra. And this was on traditional food. So thank you, everybody. And we are extremely excited to be really getting these entries, and we'll be using them in our resources and sharing them with everybody for a larger audience. Thank you very much. And over to Anil again for the rest of the panel. And I hope we are on time. Yes, Dr. Sudha. You are muted, Dr. Sudha. Could you unmute yourself, please?
A very good morning to all the educators here. Rhapsody has been doing exactly this art integration in schools for the past 8 years. So very happy to be amidst great educators and ideators. Before the next session, I'd like to introduce a short video presentation of our principals, mentors, and school partners. This is an initiative which was also started by Rhapsody, setting up school choirs for teachers of schools. And this is a short presentation put together in just 2 days by all of them. This will also be followed by our Rock Challenge winners. And the topic of this was online class. And we received more than 500 entries for this. We can see that immediately after the video presentation by our mentors, principals, and school representatives.
हम होंगे कामयाब, हम होंगे कामयाब, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन। ओहो मन में है विश्वास, पूरा है विश्वास, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन। होगी शांति चारों ओर, होगी शांति चारों ओर, होगी शांति चारों ओर एक दिन। ओहो मन में है विश्वास, पूरा है विश्वास, हम होंगे कामयाब एक दिन। We shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand, we'll walk hand in hand, we'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome someday. We shall overcome someday.
And I'm back for those who joined later. So I'm the person who keeps playing the keyboard from time to time to sometimes just to wake us all up. And so I'll start by doing. I'll stop right there. There's been a lot of talk from the morning in multiple directions. So one, we were talking about inspiration, and you heard from higher education representatives. I mean, people who represent some of the highest institutions for post-secondary learning in the country. And they were talking about arts for its own sake. And in fact, specifically, they made a mention that let's not get into becoming too strict about how we assess them, because art is really natural to life. Not that I'm fond of quoting her, but the actor Felicia Rashad actually made a very interesting observation. She said, a child learns to draw before it learns to write, and learns to sing before she can speak. And a child learns to dance before she can walk. And we know this. Art is absolutely integral and basic to every child. But are we complicating this? Are we making this more and more complicated by overloading an already loaded school timetable, where teachers are already constrained, adding more and more and more to what a teacher needs to do? Or are we getting to something which is actually basic and quite easy for anyone to do? And this becomes the question. Part of this is what we were discussing as assessment. And you heard mentioned by Joji sir on holistic report card. That was mentioned once. And we need to understand what that means. We've been talking about qualitative assessments. What is a qualitative assessment? So all these become very important questions. So at Rhapsody, which I founded, and my team has been wonderful running this conference this morning, we've been looking at how music can be used to teach STEM and other subjects precisely the way these guidelines seem to have defined, except we've been doing it purely using music in a very interesting way in so many schools. But even we have struggled to look at how to assess this, right? So there's no one-to-one correlation between what you learn as a music song and immediately is that going to result in something in terms of STEM learning or calculated learning? No. As Dr. Bhaskar said, I don't think that's the way the human brain works. So how do we understand this holistic report card? What's it for? And I'm very, very happy to bring in at this point somebody who's a friend, is a great visionary, been a great educator. She's a single-minded, focused educator, I would say, because for her, setting up and running her school has been an entire act of passion. She's been one of the most spirited people I have met and a very, very strong feminine presence in the region. I'd like to welcome Dr. Vasanthi Tyagarajan, who's the founder and principal of the Sishya School in Hosur. I would like to go ahead and say a very, very dear personal friend. And Vasanthi ma'am has been involved in the formulation of the holistic report card along with CBSE. And she is here to give us insight onto A, holistic report card, and B, does art integration, how does that fit into this holistic report card? Because it's all becoming, ma'am, very, very complicated. Too many rules, it looks like. Is it really that complicated, or is it something very simple? Is it actually going to make life easier for the teachers? We turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Anil. It's such a pleasure to work with you, and the kind of interactions we've had. I must say that the passion that you have, not just for arts and arts integration, the passion you have for children, it's so natural in you that everything you do, I think, finally lands with the child. And in that way, you are very much a teacher, as we all are in schools. And I'm so glad that you started getting to schools and working with them, because I think it's high time we started focusing on these arts. Otherwise, it was like one appendage to the timetable, and you would have arts period, one teacher would come in, the children just thought that it was just another class. And I think another aspect that we faced in schools, honestly, was, Anil, that this art subject would be given a go by. If I had a physics portion that's pending, or I had a mathematics class that's pending, I would tell the arts teacher to hand over that class to me. And you could see the actual disappointment writ all over the children's faces, because they hated it when their most favorite classes were grabbed from them. And I think we all must agree, it's an accepted fact now that the arts have started, actually people have started recognizing, thanks to CBSE across the country, that the arts has come to stay. They have become part of the schools, not because CBSE has made it mandatory. We must remember, and that's my personal experience, Anil, that the arts, if they are integrated properly into the curriculum with the support of core subject teachers, it definitely has a role in education, because it helps children become themselves instead of becoming like somebody else. And I think this is very, very critical for us to remember. So you already pointed out that you did work on the STEM, now it's called the STEAM part of it, with the arts coming in, which means globally, it's been clearly recognized that it's not STEM anymore. And why have the arts come in? Because it's been recognized that there are immense benefits happening by the integration of the arts. But as Georgie was pointing out, he's a very close colleague and friend of mine. And very nicely, he shared the fact that we have to be very careful about this integration. The CBSE no doubt has brought it into what is called an art integrated learning, and then it's mandatory that you fill in certain forms and only then you get your hall ticket. That's all fine. But we shouldn't be doing things for the sake of some organization or CBSE. I think somewhere the biggest challenge that principals face today, Anil, is to make sure that the teachers of core subjects, so-called core subjects, are convinced about the impact of the arts. And I can tell you, I'm convinced, I passionately use it. Even now, we were just prior to your meeting, we were having a discussion of plans for next year. And I said, I was fighting with all my core subject heads by saying, I want more of the games and I want more of the core scholastic. And I'm going to talk to Anil. I was mentioning you by name and saying, we need Anil to come and tell us here how to remove that appendage and bring it into the main curriculum, so that the children seamlessly, that's the word for it, seamlessly integrate the arts, and they do not look like, we had this beautiful video which I had shared with people about a teacher who had recognized the fact that certain concepts in science are not easy to so-called get by children. It's pretty tough. They are either vague, or the textbook doesn't give them adequate things, or any number of videos, it doesn't throw light on the clarity of the concept. And one such, there are many such concepts in science. And if you look at force, you can't see force. You have to experience force. And all of that can happen so well only on the ground, not inside the classroom. You either, so the CBSE or the NEP talks about the integration of the arts as well as the sports, the health and physical education, all of these aspects getting integrated into the school. So children have to go out, go into the ground, take the football, throw it on the ground. Each one tests out why does it strike differently for each one. Sit down, analyze it, infer. And I've done this myself with grade 3. And I found my children of that class beautifully collaborating and coming up with solutions. Why? How come the same level, the targets were at the same place, but the way we hit the ball, each one, it fell at different places. And then we came to the concept of force. And believe me, those children are now in grade 5. And whenever I cross them in the corridor, they say, Ma'am, we can't forget the concepts of force. So why do you think that happened? A lot of experiential learning. So if the NEP talks about experiential learning, and if CBSE is talking about it, I am the one who designed, one of the designers of the experiential learning manuals and the training for CBSE. But Anil, very honestly, experiential learning is, people mix it up with experience. All of us are undergoing experience all the time, Anil. Right now when I'm talking to you, people are watching, it's an experience for me, it's an experience for you. Then why is the term called experiential learning and not simply experience? So this clarity, schools must have, I try to do it through my training, that it's very important to see that you learn out of that experience. And it's only when the teacher provides such an experience for her children with careful planning, she's got to be very sure why she's doing it. Otherwise, it's going to be one hunky-dory kind of, everybody's having a jolly good time, but why did we have this jolly good time? God only knows. So joyful learning could be there, but experiential learning must be learning that happens with an experience. And how do I know that my children have learned? That is where the power of reflection comes in. Teachers cannot rush through and close an activity. You have to sit back and do reflection. What do you think went with our activity well? What are some things you didn't quite get? There are checklists of reflection that happens, because reflective thinking is nothing but a review of the experience you had. And it tells you what I know and what I don't know. It tells the teacher what she did well and didn't do well. And it tells us, can we proceed or can we not proceed further on the concept? You see, if you look at chemistry, we had this very nice experiment on the molecules, the way they are distributed in solids, liquids, and gases. Children can't see the molecules. So we asked them to do actually a kind of a dance, hip-hop kind of dance. And we took it from a video we saw in a school in America. And these children were doing a hip-hop dance where the teacher just played the music and said, now you move like the molecules which you find in air or in gases. And then suddenly the children separate. And then he says, imagine you're in a solid. So they touch the table. It's so solid. And see that experience. And then he says, now I'll play the music. How would molecules look in a solid? So the children got together, close by, because that's how they are packed. So he didn't tell them anything. And he said, now move as if you're liquids. And they moved. So liquids are a little far apart. End of it, there was an assessment. When we talk so much about assessment, he just told them you reflect and then you draw. Right? He played music, then he told them you draw now and tell me, what did you understand about this concept of these three states of matter? The fluidity principle and all. And believe it or not, the children were drawing whatever they had experienced. And to the teacher, it was not alarming that somebody didn't get it quite right. It was a matter of reflection again. It was not that I am a great teacher, but I think the children aren't good learners. So if my children are not good learners, there's something wrong with the way I taught them. You see, this is one aspect we have to remember. And integration of the arts, I use it in a big way in my school. I want to share with you just one. I had a PPT to share, but I thought I must talk to you straight, Anil, not show you a PPT and all. It's better to talk to you straight on the passion I have for this integration. I believe strongly that this is the way children must learn. Fortunately now, the CBSE and the NEP kind of made it compulsory, good enough. But schools have to get trained, because as the previous speaker, Georgie, said, you need to be very clear what kind of the arts you're going to draw to link with the concept you're going to teach. And that concept should have a very clear learning outcome, Anil. If that teacher wanted children to distinguish between the three states of matter, that's his learning outcome. So when he's clear that the children must distinguish between these three states of matter, he got them to perform the dance, and at the end of it, they did distinguish between those three states of matter.
Absolutely right, ma'am. I just wanted to interject to say, I think you brought up a very important point. That's where I wanted to stress that learning outcomes need to be very clear. And also, why are we doing what are we doing? It's not just about piecemeal. I'll just add whatever I like, and that I think is one. I just wanted to bring it back, Vasanthi ma'am, to this holistic report card. Is this going to have an implication on the holistic report card?
Definitely, Anil, because I am on the committee with CBSE and the chairman. We're all working on this holistic report card, 360 degrees, and it's called a holistic progress card. See, we modified the terminology, and no longer are schools going to use the terminology called report card. It's not a report at all of where you are right now as a student. It is your progress. So, we are brainstorming a lot into that progress card. And when we talk about holistic, the arts must be there. You cannot have your core subjects and call it a holistic progress card. Right. And if you're talking about the integration of the arts into the learning, then all of the arts must come into that holistic progress card. Correct. And there is a lot of emphasis, because it's a 360-degree kind of card. It means all aspects of every child, the 360-degree of every child. So what is that 360-degree? We have to define very clearly. What are the inputs that are going to go into the 360 degrees for a child? The strength and weaknesses is a very vague word kind of, because children don't even know how to list out their strength and weakness to make a report, progress card. What are all the checklists you have to give them? So we are designing all that. But most importantly, the emphasis on the arts is happening in our meetings. Right. Because we are very careful that we do not focus so much on the core subjects and say 5 core subjects, there'll be some mark entry in the report card, done. Right. No. Right. It's going to be the progress of that child the way the child got comfortable, which of the arts is the child actually frequently using. So schools have a lot of work to do, no doubt, Anil. We'll have to get a kind of an MI profile of children. What's your strong? Because I'm a very passionate MI person. I've worked with Dr. Gardner personally, and I know how much we've shared with him on the MIs. It's not as simple as we think, nor is it as complicated as we fear. It's a question of understanding what we need to do.
I'm very glad you mentioned. I'm very glad you mentioned it's not as complicated as we fear. I wanted to.
Absolutely, Anil. And it's not as easy as we think. Let's be clear about that. Then what does it mean? A little bit of focused attention by the teacher. So when I'm designing my children's plans for learning, I have to be very conscious, Anil, that I'm bringing in this because the holistic report card is going to ask you to report all of this, that entire picture of the child. Now, as a teacher, if you're going to report that 360 degrees of that child, you must know what are the strong points of this child. Now, if I'm teaching a concept in English, I always found that this child would love to draw instead of, recite a poem. They preferred drawing. Then I should know that. And this is where other subject teachers will collate and understand the MI profile of every child so that you strengthen the already existent MI of that child, and also where the child is weak, let's say spatial intelligence or interpersonal. You don't ignore that because it is low on the profile. That's where the teacher steps in and increases that. More opportunity given for collaborative work. So what happens in your holistic card now, Anil? You will see that at one stage, the teacher will mention that this child is very good at all this and needs a little attention on the interpersonal skills. Now, because it is progressive, it is the responsibility of the teacher to provide opportunities to increase interpersonal skills of the child. Where will the child improve?
Right.
Absolutely. The next assessment of the progress card will show that improvement. I can now see X has moved beautifully into working with a group and needs a little more honing on sharing of ideas, something like that. So the suggestive remarks also we are working on, because we have to also consider, Anil, the entire gamut of teachers across this country. I could have someone in a very remote place who may not have access to the best of language for that report card. So we are trying to give them drop-down boxes, suggestive areas of filling, so that what we fill, Anil, is authentic. You simply don't give anything as very good, excellent. These are not words which can describe. Then what's the difference between excellent and very good? Where's the gap?
Exactly. I mean, I was going to ask you exactly that, because much has been said about qualitative assessment, but qualitative also necessarily means subjective, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Right. So how do we actually come to some common understanding?
Yes. So we'll have to design rubrics which are going to hold the key to the entire 360-degree holistic art, but rubrics which are teacher friendly. Rubrics which every teacher can access. It's not, Anil, just one elite group sitting with a chairman at Delhi and saying, these are the ways you do. It's not fair, because I come from Hosur, Anil, and mine is not what you call a metropolitan city, please. And of course, we have the best of schools in Hosur, no doubt about that. But look at schools beyond us also, very far away in rural areas. And so the kind of teachers they probably can access. We have to make this card teacher friendly. So today we're looking at not just the terms, the terminology, the structure of the holistic report card. It is going to be a 360-degree complete profile of that child. But we are looking at the teacher first, how to make it teacher friendly. Because if you can't convince your teachers, and if you can't convey to teachers properly what you want them to fill in, everybody would be filling in something which may not be appropriate about that child.
Absolutely.
And you know what, this holistic report card is also designed to be carried as a portfolio of that child. So there is going to be the onus on the school to start developing portfolios of children where children preserve all their work, the drawings or whatever they do. All of it becomes a part of it.
So this clarity was needed, Vasanthi ma'am. That's the reason I asked this very specific question. You and I know, have conversations that last hours and hours. Unfortunately, I'm just looking at the clock, and we have panels to go.
So you know what? I just want a minute to share the plan which we work with in my school. Probably it will benefit a lot of people. The way we agree. So just use only that. That's why I avoid the PPT altogether. So I'll just share my screen, and probably I'll have to look at, not this. I'm sorry. Just a second, Anil. I'm just struggling with my sharing.
As you are sharing, I'll use that time to bring in a quick example. Somebody's asked a question. Can you do this for maths and science?
Go ahead.
Maths and science, and in fact, that's exactly what we've been talking about from the beginning.
My plan is now ready. Can you see my Word document on the screen, Anil?
Not yet, ma'am. Not. It's come now. It's come now.
Yeah. So can you see, this is how the other classes happen. This is grade 3, where we are dealing with a topic called force, as you can see on the screen, right? So what we do here is, the teacher has a very clear outcome that they will infer after the investigation that force can change the speed and direction of objects. This is class 3, 4, third standard. The outcome is very clear. Then can you see activity 1? The teacher gives them an investigation activity. So they use a toy car, experiential learning that's happening. The child measures it. Then the child does second investigation. And after that, the inference question. What conclusion can you reach after the investigation? Why have you reached it? And then there is an assessment that's happening right then and there. After that, give them an extension and list one more situation where you think it's necessary to apply force. And then the child does reflection. Can you see the reflection happening?
Yes.
Then the teacher goes to activity 2. Again, there's a discussion. So you see the arts coming in here. Initiate a discussion between a toy car and a real car about their features. Draw these images. So the drawing is coming in to integrate. That is being assessed. Again, look at the picture. Ensure to use force in a productive way. The value education. So this is a good plan which we wrote about. Look at one child hitting and injuring another one. So force. Is it okay? Then a little bit of the COVID, and then this is a good plan. See, this is what is important, Anil. If you can see, every plan will go with this closure for the subject coordinator to check. Is there a value-based activity in that lesson for that day? Are we using experiential learning? Which activity? Are you integrating the arts? Have you used storytelling as a tool? This teacher didn't use it for this particular one. What are those 21st century skills that you are tapping? So this is how, Anil, we work, and we are trying to ensure that every day the children get it in a holistic manner through the integration of experiential learning, constructivism, the 21st century skills. So principals have this huge onus on ourselves, Anil, to ensure that we handhold our teachers and take them through.
Thank you, Vasanthi ma'am. As usual, it is not mere inspiration, but you're always a person who goes at it step by step. And I think most of us look to our principals to guide us and mentor us in the way you have to execute, because it's all very well to discuss at a 30,000 feet level, but what does it boil down to inside the classroom? And I want to thank you for your example. Thank you for your time. And it is very, very, very essential that this holistic report card is also understood by teachers. I would not be wrong in saying that 3 groups of people have to work together. One is the school and the administrators of the school. One is, of course, the parents who have to cooperate with this process. And the third, I would go ahead and say people like me and people like me who are working as artists as well as educators, who are also needed to bring that bridge, that gap between. So I think I'm very happy, even if we didn't achieve anything else today. I know we achieved a lot. At least all these 3 groups of people are coming together today and are able to actually share this in a common platform.
Anil,
I want to thank you once.
Congratulated, Anil, because when I met you last, the passion you have for the arts, it's not just your music, okay, it's the arts. And I'm so glad you took up this particular area of Rhapsody and the sessions where you got in principals on board and a lot of people coming in here. Congratulations to you, Anil. You've done a great job. Something
not just me, ma'am. Yeah, it's Macmillan and me and my team. So thank you.
I know,
thank you,
Vandana, you're wonderful people to work with, and I'm so glad that you invited me. What a privilege for me, Anil, to be sharing this days with you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. For equal privilege to us. Thank you so much. And that was Dr. Vasanthi joining us from Hosur on a very important aspect of this. I'm going to go straight into our in-conversation sessions with 2 very famous people. They're famous people. I don't think any of them need an introduction. I'm very privileged to call them friends. They've been guides to me at multiple points of time. I've sat in on panels with them, sat in on committees with them. The first is I mean, needs absolutely no introduction to anybody who's been following theater, anybody who's been following theater in schools. She has been associated with the Prithvi Theatre in Mumbai. She started a movement called Junoon. I call it a movement because I think it was really a revolution in its own way. And in bringing theatre, but more than theatre, bringing the arts into schools in a very, very interesting fashion. She's also been associated with foundations which have promoted the arts. Incidentally, I learned yesterday she's been associated with the Kochi Muziris Biennale also. And has been a passionate advocate for keeping it real. I will put it that way. Without further ado, I'd like to invite my very dear friend, I would say in an almost spiritual sense, a mentor in looking at arts in schools, Sanjana Kapoor. Hi, Sanjana, and welcome to this morning's list of very riveting sessions. We are very happy that Macmillan joined hands with us and could bring so many schools on board to listen to us. And Sanjana, this is meant to be a more informal session, the one I'm doing with you and the one I'm doing after this. And I'm going to go ahead and ask you straight away, how are you feeling this morning? And what's your reaction to all these conversations? What is your take on all of it?
Well, I'm really excited because since you asked me to be part of this, of course, I dived into reading everything I possibly could about the subject, including vast amounts of literature from the government. And it's been a roller coaster ride from complete frustration and horror at so much of the prescriptiveness of things, especially in the last notice that came from CBSE. I'm horrified with how prescriptive it is, but to delight and inspiration from the previous actual notifications that came out and the guidelines in 2019 about arts integration and about articulations of the value of the arts. And this has been going on for the many, many years now, since 2005. One has seen this in our education policies, but it's quite wonderful. I think this is an opportunity for all of us, the arts world and the education world, to forge a new connect to really impacting the lives of children. And at the center of all this, of course, is children and is their natural ability to learn. We don't have to really teach them. We just have to be able to open up windows and doors and lay the ground for them and nurture the ground, and they will learn. That's in their nature of their DNA of what they are. Right. We hamper it by trying to think we can teach and we can mark them and grade them and assess them. And here is where all the complications come in, which are structures that we face all over the world. So I'm thrilled to be here to share my passion and to glean inspiration. So I've been listening from the morning. I missed, unfortunately, the very first session. I'm in a sort of makeshift space in Ranthambore, but I'm delighted to be with you.
So I'm going to pick up on something in the first session said, since you said you missed it. And this was Dr. Bhaskar Ramamurthi, who's the director of IIT Madras. And he made a comment and he said, forget about assessments and all of these things. The arts is about being human, And I was particularly thrilled that the director of, a premier STEM institution should make that remark. And of course, he's biased. He's a musician himself. But he said, forget about this assessment stuff. This is the way people used to live, right? You give a child a crayon and he or she can occupy themselves for hours. I mean, you don't really need to tell them what to do. And that gets at your point about this, this whole divide we have between the prescriptive and what is normal. What is actually very, very intrinsic and very innate for any human being, but not just the child. I also, because you and I are sort of the naughty mischief makers in every one of these conferences, I did something unbeknown to even my team, which is that I noticed I took I did a counter on the number of times the word child was mentioned. And I also did a counter for the number of times educators was mentioned. Child was mentioned 11 times. The word educator has been mentioned 209 times. And I think that that itself is very reflective of, unfortunately, where we become a bit blindsided. That I think we're forgetting the child at the center of the equation. So I wanted you to reflect on your experience in working with schools with Junoon, because I have been part of it myself as a resource. Okay, what did the children teach you?
Well, more than anything, they taught me to have faith in the fact that our impulse to share the world of the arts with them was bang on, was right, was what was needed to just open up windows of delight and realization. And that's what we did. And it just reinforced our belief that we believed that children firstly need to be talked with as equals, and windows and doors of our world of the arts need to be opened up, and they will venture in at their own pace and time, and it will touch them, it will change them. Unfortunately, by the time we get to be old and grown up, we are so jaded, we've closed and created a lot of barriers of that. And so I think it's essential, and that's what is beautiful in the 2004-5 document on education, is that it is, which Shubha Mudgal was chairing, it is essential that children get exposed to the highest quality of our arts from across our country. And there is no other country like India in the world. And we can say this with great glee. I don't want to say it with pride, because that sort of makes it arrogant, but I say it with joy, that which has such diversity and such amazing, diversity and plurality of the arts. It's just extraordinary. You have to go just 20 miles and there is a different culture. And that's what we should be celebrating. I am scared that because schools are so overburdened with what they have to deal with, they're going to go towards this easily digestible, prescriptive nature of the new communication from the ministry. And the arts are going to be really... Firstly, actually, I think they're going to miss the arts out completely. I think they're going to go to cuisine, which is so easy. And I don't believe cuisine is an art. I'm sorry. And they're going to go to digital art, which is easy. And so they're going to miss the point of the arts, which is a blessing in a way, because I think to dilute and to not be able to celebrate the sheer magnificence of the arts with children, it's better not to deal with them. But what is wonderful about what art integration is trying to do, and where I think the teacher does need to be mentioned much more than the child, is that I think what the missing word that I've not heard so far is we need the artful teacher.
Yeah.
We need artful thinking to be grasped into our world. We need the teacher from day one of their teacher training to be enveloped in this world of artful thinking. What do we do? What do artists do? We sit in front of blankness. There's a blank stage. There's a blank canvas. There's with you a silent instrument, and we venture forth to create meaning or to create something that moves us, and hopefully, and the art only comes alive when it has an audience. So it has to have that audience. Without that, the art is meaningless. And so teachers have to be taught that they have to not be fearful of that blank space. That blank space is critically important. And the children who are our audience, but the children who are the teacher's audience actually will fill that space with magical creation of their own. We don't need to teach them how to draw a Warli painting, or we don't have to teach them how to they will do it. We just need to be able to allow them to explore and to explore the concept. So it was, I think that Dr. Tyagarajan was really inspiring in what she's been doing in her school. It's so exciting to be able to see that you get the children to stand up, get off that chair and desk, and discover what molecules, how molecules move and walk and talk like. It's just, wow, how fascinating is that? But so I think that's it.
Right. And I think the one thing that I would like you to, because you express this so much more beautifully than any of us do, is this art as art, art as just a way of being versus art in this integrated mode. Because the moment we start putting normative or prescriptive monikers to art, as you very intuitively have sort of honed in on, it ceases being art. It starts becoming, something else. It starts becoming a syllabus. It starts becoming something to be assessed. And as you very rightly said, I think we end up missing the point. That it's not a tool,
But it is. In the prescription, it is clearly a tool, and I think that totally. So, for instance, a big challenge, and in Junoon, my realization through our work also was that we had the audacity, and in a little bit it started even at Prithvi, to actually place science and arts on par with each other, because they both, scientists and an artist, they have to take risks, they have to be brave, they have to have courage, they have to go where nobody's been before, they have to not fear failing and falling flat on your face again and again and again and again, and then suddenly you get that aha moment of something coming together beautifully. And also, you're not running after money and fame alone. I mean, that can't be it. Otherwise you're a particular kind of person, and then you're not, in my mind, you're not a true artist and a true scientist. But the problem same thing is happening with science, with mathematics, for instance. Why are we not? I think the areas of pure mathematics, of research in pure mathematics, are diminishing globally, because we want maths to be a tool. We want it to be applied. But what about the sheer brilliance of just mathematic adventure and into new realms? And it does, and it's proven through history that it has exploded into new thinking in different realms, and it has been applied, but it's not for the application. So it's actually the process, and that is also something about the arts, is that it is about the process that is the most essential thing. And so for me, I'm really, what excites me is this new opportunity that the people in positions of power and policy are opening up. But it terrifies me that we're going about it the wrong way. I mean, how can we believe that we are going to impact children first, then we're going to look at the curriculum, and then we'll look at teacher training? Surely teacher training is central, and the curriculum has to go hand in hand. And then after 5 years, when we've done our work and we've really set up the stage, then we go and work with the children, but we're not. So there's going to be khichdi. I have been horrified when I've been doing searches on the internet to try and understand. I've been talking to principal friends of mine, and they're all in a state of panic because they're not going to get their 10th grade and 12th grade cards or whatever unless they show that they've done this work in school. There are YouTube sites, and this is the beauty of our country. There are YouTube sites that help the schools, that are done by teachers, well-meaning teachers or educators, that teach you how to do this work. Jaldi mein abhi 3 hafte, 2-3 months. Let's just get it done. Jugaad. I mean, we are a nation of jugaad. So we're missing the point. So, okay. So then I have to calm myself and say, this will pass. This too will pass. And we will finally come to the realization of what it is we're trying to aim at. But it has to be the artful teacher. It has to be the teacher that is so easy with themselves and with their being and with their understanding of their subject, that they can play with it through various means, and they will allow the children to play, and I think more and more educators, not only have the arts been talked about more and more in education in the last 10-15 years, but more and more in education across the globe, the whole idea of play is being centrally held as essential, that children should be allowed to play. So I'm terrified that we're going to have 3-year-olds in school now with the new policy, and they're going to be taught how to read and write and numeracy, and they're going to have to do numbers. I know that a friend of mine whose child is 4 is having to learn how to write till 50. Why is that child not able to play and to discover and learn concepts of numbers, concepts of force, concepts of all these through play and observation? So, artful thinking has to involve reasoning. It has to involve questioning and investigation. It has to involve joining the dots, observing. All artists observe. You have to observe. You have to then be able to describe or articulate or create your observation into your art form. You have to be able to compare and connect, to explore, to finding complexities. I love that one of your speakers talked about complexities, and they talked about wickedness. I love that. I'm going to steal that word, but the wickedness of it all. But that's it. That we live in this beautiful, complex world, and children are able to approach complexity and abstractness in the most incredibly deep manner, until we start cutting off their legs of curiosity and we start saying, no, this is the one way and the only way and the only true way. And then we're just left with, I think that this can swing both ways, this pendulum where
I think we are in a churn. I think it's best to characterize this and say that we are in a churn. I think the good news is that art is being looked at far more seriously than it was before, or at least it's now there is a conscious will to implement it. It may not be the best way, but there is a will to implement it. And clearly people are sitting up and discussing it. The very fact that so many people have signed up for today is a great sign of changes to come. And I think in a country of our size and complexity, we have to go through churn to arrive at any sort of meaningful way of going forward. I mean, that any way cannot be the right way because it doesn't fit everybody. And I think that's the sort of, I would say, mature reflection has taught me that as an artist, is that you've got to be patient and wait. On that note of patience and wait, I think we'll open it up to 1 or 2 questions. If the team has picked up on any specific question for Sanjana, is there any specific question that we wanted to discuss, which has come in from any of the school heads, because it's important to give voice to that.
I mean, I also just want to add one point, is that I think when we're looking at the teacher and the artful teacher, we also need the teacher who is at the highest level of our social prestige. And how do we create that as part of our society? One of your talkers spoke about that as well. Is that, for me, in my mind, I want to see an India, and it possibly never happened in my lifetime, but I would love it if it happened in my lifetime. I want to see an India where we respect and regard our cricketers, our film stars, and our teachers on par.
At the same level. I think that's bravo.
We need to build this army. We've got 3 million teachers in India right now. That's nowhere near the ratio of 1:40. We need 12 million teachers to be in that ratio. And how do we build this incredibly rich and brilliant army of nurturers? They are nurturing our tomorrow. And how do we do this?
No, I think that's very, very, very well said. I'm so glad, because I think finally somebody spoke up for the teachers. On that note, Rakhi has a question. Art integration is great, but we need to convince our students too. How can we as teachers encourage and guide our individual students to value and gain from this art integrated learning vis-a-vis how they value their non-arts integrated training?
Well, firstly, the students know that parents need to know this word. This word is backstage. It's for all of us. It's not for upfront. So art integration is about an attitude, an approach. So you don't need to go and tell a parent, because they won't get it. So forget it. And your students don't need to have it. They don't need to know it. But they will devour it because they'll be having so much joy and fun. And they will be learning it through their body. and through their mind and their heart and every pore in their being, you as a teacher will have joy. And that's what you will need. So we don't need to fear, oh my God, what are parents going to say? We don't need to tell them what we're doing. This is our job. Performers don't tell you what we do backstage. That's our job. So you don't need to show your guts to the world. You need to just get on with it.
And we don't have to categorize. I was talking to Leela Sampson the other day, and she said something very nice. She said there's a line between what the teacher's role is and what the parent's role is, right? So do not allow them to cross that line, because this is all the preparation that we as educators need to do. They don't need to know this. Right?
So there's something else. Sorry, I'm going to add, because when I was reading all these documents, my big question, and I chatted with you about it, is why are we so panicked to rebuild something when it doesn't seem to be broken, or is it broken? And I understood from the documents I've read is that the government is very concerned, as literacy levels are really, really low in comparison to what they should be. So a 5th standard student doesn't know how to read 2nd standard books. Okay, so that has to be addressed. The second thing is that kids are not, we are creating a generation of certified young people, but they don't have any skills and they don't have abilities to find jobs. So that is a slightly complex situation, but that is an issue. And the third thing is, we want to do away with tutoring and all these huge tutoring institutions that have cropped up to give tuitions to students. But I think then those issues have to be dealt with in a very different way. I don't see where this
has anything to do with that.
So yeah. I find the documents I'm reading from the government very confusing. And so I think that we need to, what's really good about this is that it opens up conversation and debate, and we have to have these conversations. They don't have to be just kept within a few elite decision makers. I think that's what I've been participating in a lot of international seminars, and there's a whole group of young teachers, or not even young teachers, who are advocates in their field, whether they're in America or whether they're in Australia or wherever they are. And they are, they are participating in these conferences to get energy from each other, get new ideas, get new ways of being.
And importantly, you are not alone. We are all in this together. So I think, Sanjana, on that note, I wanted to say thank you so much. I mean, it's always a delight listening to you speak. Even when you're freely articulating and what could be a challenge to what the status quo is. And I think it's important that you are also, I know for a fact that you're voicing the concerns and voicing the views of many when you're talking about, the prescriptive nature of documentation, and also this whole, to-do list that we are attaching to something as free-willed as the arts. And I think that's part of the discussion. But I would also conclude on saying, as Virgil Thompson, and he says, and this is about music, but you can apply it to all of art, which says, in the end, whatever other deceptions life may have in store for you, art in itself will never let you down. And I think I'm going to sort of stop it right there. Thank you, Sanjana, because I think we have to continue these discussions. And as you said, the two biggest takeaways, in my opinion, from everything you said is, one, it's great that this conversation is happening. It's great that these floodgates are opening and we are into implementation as opposed to just keeping on talking about it in these closeted rooms. And the second thing is that there needs to be a very conscious effort into teacher training. And I think that's that's where it starts. That's sort of the source pool before we start getting straight away and headlong into very lopsided implementation. Thank you, Sanjana, and what a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker, again, needs absolutely no introduction to anybody, either in India or abroad. Again, a very, very dear friend, might I even dare say a collaborator and a conspirator. But more than anything else, apart from her stellar achievements in the field of music, she's again been somebody who's always never been afraid to speak her mind, especially when things seem to be very dictatorial and normative in this country. She's got opinions on a wide range of subjects. Very specific to this conclave, She has been part of the steering committee of the National Curriculum Framework in 2005. And therefore has been very much a part of the thinking process behind how arts in education, arts education, and arts as education needs to be thought about. So without further ado, it gives me the greatest pleasure and honor to invite my dear Shubhaji, Srimati Shubha Mudgal, is an in-conversation session. Namaskar, Shubhaji.
Namaste, and thank you for including me in this absolutely wonderful discussion.
So Shubhaji, I'll go straight ahead into this. So there's been a diversity of views from the morning, and what was interesting to me is that we've been having passionate advocacy for the arts from the science people. So
Yes.
we had the STEM people and the economics people all say yes, 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 yes. And then we have a whole bunch of compliances, which, as Sanjana pointed out, which can be potentially quite confusing for the person who's actually on the ground. What we would say are frontline warriors who are the teachers, right? And ultimately, it's the buck is stopping there, right? And in between, there are people like us who are artists who are also trying to help ease this process, right? So there's an ecosystem that's been built up. So I'm going to just ask you, because you mean a lot to all of us. What is your mood like listening to all of this? Where do you find yourself situated in all of this?
Well, I'm happy that the conversation has started. I'm happy that the idea of including arts in mainstream education and making it available for everybody has been restarted, although it has been happening for a while, but no concrete steps were taken for a long time. So I'm happy that the conversation has started. At the same time, I'm a little concerned that how is it all going to be implemented? Because in a sense, it's a great idea that that to include arts in several ways has been almost prescribed now in the new NEP. But at the same time, how is that implementation going to happen? And how are various issues that have been of great importance, at least to many of us, and for a long time? One is the issue of actually teaching the arts in mainstream school education, so including the arts. And the other is to integrate arts into the entire schooling system. So to me, these two are both need to be looked at with very, very careful lenses. When we say arts, what do we mean? By and large, whenever we've discussed arts education, the people who have been involved in helping design policy have largely been people who come from the background of classical music. And I know that I'm a part of that as well. But what about the arts in general? What about the enormous diversity of the arts? Have we bothered to also look at other arts? Because in India, when you say arts education, what kind of arts education? So that concern, are we really looking at the unique diversity of India when we talk about how we will teach the arts? We cannot have, and I've said that perhaps in my position paper, which I made that remark, that are we going to try and create a nation full of people who are singing Malkons and Darbari, or are we, yeah, or dance Bharatanatyam or Odissi or any other classical art? What about the other many arts that I, as a student of music, and I've been studying music for decades, I remain ignorant about them? So where are we going to include all of that? Then I'm concerned about another thing, that although we made it compulsory to include arts in our school system now in the new policy, at the same time we declare that arts are non-essential. I mean, this is crazy. So how can you, it's like the left hand doesn't know what the hand is doing. So when we say that arts are essential in the schooling system, we cannot say that no, arts are non-essential, let's discuss them at a later stage. So I think the essentiality of the arts, and the essentiality of the arts in their enormous, humongous diversity in India, must be kept in mind when plans are being made to implement this very welcome policy. The other is that how do we integrate arts into the teaching of other subjects as well? I think merely feeling happy that we've asked, let's say, children to draw something or color something, certainly it's a good activity. I'm not saying that, I'm not criticizing it, but I'm saying then we need to plan the syllabus and the curriculum with a completely different, we need to relook at it. How are we going to tell the child who's learning music that mathematics is also a part of your music training, or
Exactly.
history is also a part of your music training? And how are we going to tell the student who is the child who is learning history that, look, you can need not learn history only by looking at your lesson and answering questions. You can actually learn it through music as well, or through
By the
dances.
way, I'm
Yeah.
going to interject right there. I remember in DPS Varanasi, and I was there at your invitation. There was a song that you had created on Jhansi Wali Rani. I remember this very, very well, and the children sang it.
Yes.
And I know it's not a concert, but can you just sing us one line of that? Because I want this example to be known, because you made
I'll
that point.
I'll give you another example. You know, we talk about, let's say we teach about the struggle for independence, for India's
Right.
independence. Across the country, there were people poets who were writing poetry to encourage people to follow in the footsteps of great leaders, like Mahatma Gandhi, for example. So there was a poet called Gauri Dutt Pandey from Uttarakhand, who everybody would refer to as Gorda. And Anish and I taught this at a school in Varanasi. You can't imagine how soon the children learned it, and also the context. So
Right.
it was saying follow Gandhi, and it said it took the template of a folk song from the Braj Mathura region called Rasya, and this was the song. गांधी के भगत बनो रसिया, गांधी के भगत बनो रसिया, गांधी के. Now this tune is known to many people and with other text, but using this template we have actually brought together folk music, poetry, history, many other aspects that we would like to educate our children. It talks about untouchability, the problem of untouchability, the problem of caste, the problem of inequality, and all of this is addressed in a single song. So I think we need to look at both these areas of how we will teach the arts and how we will integrate the arts in a manner that really also considers the amazing diversity of India.
No, I think it's an excellent point, Shubhaji, and it also addresses, I think, geographic concerns, because I know from the South, and we largely deal with teachers in the South, a large portion of South Indian cultural art forms, and not just the classical, but we're talking about traditional art forms, have been completely ignored, completely sidestepped, and it's often very confounding results you get in the classroom when you're trying to, suddenly force fit a thumri or a or a chote kayal into a South Indian classroom, because there's absolutely no context to them as to where it's coming from. And I think the point is very well made. I'll only ask another question to you. And this I'm asking more as a friend than in education or anything like that. There is a concern, and I think there's a concern that many of us are voicing, that we're trying to go towards a unified idea of culture. And this is what culture means. And I know this is a slightly risky question also, but I think it needs to be addressed, and if we don't address it, who's going to do it? So I think there needs to be this appreciation of maybe, and I think a lot of words like inclusivity, diversity, all these things have started just becoming buzzwords. It's like putting a hashtag on a tweet or something like that. But it's where do we actually see the real implications of these things? How do you think, what is your foretelling of this? Because I think we're living in a very, very transitional phase where there's a unified idea of ethics, culture, and code of behavior that we're supposed to subscribe to. Where do you think we're headed?
I think it would be a great idea, since we are talking about educating the education system and about teaching children, I think it would be such a great idea to also look at having a umbrella policy, but also looking at regional variants, which would mean that the local, let's say, the richness of the artistic richness of each part of India could be considered. And also, we always talk of exchange programs, let's say, between India and another country. How about exchange programs between
Within India.
states? Why would somebody who is from the north not want to learn about the arts and culture of Eastern India or of Southern India? So I think it's important to look at exchange programs and develop exchange programs which are not merely about spending a little bit of time, but actually exchanging material that we are resource material that we use with each other. Which brings me, can I make this one point, because I might not have the time, that when you say when you declare a new education policy of the kind that has been declared, what about resource material for all of this? Where are we going to find? Just think about it. We've all been teaching for so long now. We've all been involved in trying to create various modules for education. Are there toys, games, easily accessible books, graphic books, cartoon books, everything? Are there anything related to the arts that is easily accessible?
Right.
So I can't think of a single jigsaw puzzle, for example, that takes into consideration the arts in India and perhaps introduces children to various aspects of arts education. I can't think, and these need to be developed. They need to be priced in a manner that makes them accessible for everybody. Also, I need to make this point also, that we need, somewhere in our arts education, what are we offering our children? The child today is performing repertoire that was never meant for children.
Classroom, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm not saying, look, I'm not advocating that we come up with a whole data bank of nursery rhymes alone. But what about songs that are specific for children? What do our gifted children do? They go to a reality show and they sing a song which was sung by a movie star. I am not for 1 minute saying that the song is bad, that the movie star doesn't set a good example. I'm just saying, where are all those children's songs? Just the Aate Baate Dahi Chatake kind of songs that we learned when we were really little children, And we need to develop more of these, because our children are not the same that we, in our generation, for example. So I think I think we need to nurture our children in a manner that helps them create their own songs, or songs that they identify with. We can't force down the nursery rhymes we learned. We can't coochie coo. And at the same time, we need to develop. We can't have the same things that are being performed and presented by adults. We can't have them transposed for children.
I think these are very well made points. And I think the important distinction is that, of course, in pockets, there are resources available for these things, but it needs to be, I think the point you made was access. And I think that's a very, very critical point. It needs to be freely available to everybody, almost like a central, it's what you'd call open source. It should be open source. It should be freely downloadable, for example.
Yes.
I think that's a point well made. I'll open it up to one or two questions from, I know there are more than 800 school heads logged in right now. So I will open it up to one or two questions. I know everybody wants to ask you something, but I know the team is working hard to pick one or two questions which will be specific to the discussion we are having. But Shubhaji, I think if I were to summarize, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you've made two, I think both Sanjana and you have spoken very complimentary points. And I think I wanted us to have this perspective as well. So we did hear the higher education officials at the beginning talking about why arts are obviously, I mean, it's obviated that there's no gainsaying that it is absolutely necessary in education in from kindergarten. And then we were listening to the implementation teams, which are also, I think they are both having to grapple with the challenge and still make sense of it. And so in a way, they're also working very hard through it to try and make sense. Because when you have a policy, it behooves the implementers, and so I think they're in the process of trying to simplify it and saying, okay, just put it down into so one of the things I always look at with compassion is to say, okay, they also have a very difficult job, to try and make sense of this madness and see where we go with it. And then we've had Sanjana and you talk about the fact that let's get a little real. I think there's nothing to teach children. I think we have to listen to children, and I think we need to expose them to this incredible richness that we already have. You just open that Pandora's box, or rather open that Aladdin's cave of magic treasures, which is our arts, and they will find what they need to find. I don't think we need to, filter. Each child will find what they want. I hope I've got the summary right.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. And also that has, of course, been stressed, that the performative aspect need not be what is introduced.
The only thing, exactly.
Yeah. But the understanding of concepts and the idea of really reveling in the arts is a very important one, which needs to be encouraged and re-encouraged.
Okay, somebody says Abke Saman can be used to teach rain. I'm going to suggest to Ujjaini Roy that you should do it and send us a video of it, and I think we'll be thrilled.
Yes, why not? Yes.
Okay, is there any other question that is pertinent to what we were having? I'm asking my team. Is it not possible for the CBC to create a pool of teachers to create? Absolutely, I think, Shubhaji, your response to that. Is it not possible to create a pool of teachers to do this? I think we would say a pool of resources. Let's not just make it teachers. Right?
Yes, I think because a lot of people work in isolation independently, and it would be good to have to know what people are working on. Firstly, to avoid repeating the same thing. I mean, if somebody is already working on, let's say, a certain kind of books for children, what is the point in our repeating the same exercise? But I think not just me, but there must be so many people who are concerned about how arts can be integrated into the school teaching. I think perhaps it would have been nice to have invited suggestions, and of course, I realize that all suggestions cannot be integrated, but still, I think it would be good to have stakeholders. We are all stakeholders in this wonderful journey of discovering about the arts. So it would have been nice to have been able to send in our suggestions, and I think it can still be done.
I think the whole point of opening up these conversations is exactly that. And I'm very grateful to everybody who agreed to be part of it for that reason, because one is, of course, the investment in time, but I think everybody is feeling committed, and some people committed at an implementation level, and a lot of us in terms of our spirit towards this thing. I think we can have one more question. And please, I'm suggesting to the team, please avoid questions which are about asking Shubhaji to sing. That is for a different occasion where they will have to pay tickets. Right. So if there's any other questions specific to this, but if not, I'm going to ask my last question and sort of end with this. There is one. There are two views in AIL. One is to encourage the exploration of art for the sake of art. The second view is to integrate it with learning. Which do you think should be explored first? Art for art or art integrated?
Well, I think since there is a system to be followed, I think I would say that art integrated would be what we need to look at and work on. But at the same time, this question has also prompted another thought in my mind, that in a country like India, we do not have programs for gifted children, not only in the arts, but even otherwise. So I think the idea here, we are discussing an entire mass of children, but there are also gifted children, and how we teach them the other disciplines also needs to be looked at in an education policy. Can we give them the same curriculum and the same syllabi that we give to all our children, or do we create a special learning module for them? I don't have answers, but I think it's something that we need to look at very seriously.
Shubhaji, you have always been one, and you continue to be an absolutely wonderful inspiration to us all. And by saying that, I don't want to push you away to that stature that we give to these gods sitting on clouds. You are very much a part of the, the working collective, I would like to say. But I want to thank you personally and on behalf of the Rhapsody team and Macmillan team for your time today. I know how busy you are, and to share these insights, because I think, as Sanjana put it very well, I think the important thing is conversation.
Absolutely, and thank you for including me. Thank you for your kind words. I've learned a lot from many of the panelists who were speaking before me, and it's been quite wonderful. Thank you for arranging this.
Not at all, Shubhaji. I also want to point out to people watching that Shubhaji and Anishji have created some really wonderful resources for children. We were lucky enough to receive some copies a few days ago. Shubhaji, the good news for you is that we're going to use them. And we will talk offline on that. But I think, judging from this conversation, I think if people like Shubhaji and Anishji, my team, all of us would come together and start pooling these things together, a lot could be achieved. But thank you, Shubhaji, and have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. Thank you.
Many thanks. Namaskar.
Thank you. And we have come to sort of the end of the formal part of this. The most special thing for us is, of course, the performance of a child, which is going to be the final action item of the day. And this is no ordinary child. Uttara Unikrishnan will be introduced by her own guru, who also happens to be the academic head for Rhapsody. I'm very proud to call Uttara Unikrishnan, who's not only a national award winner, but is also a Rhapsody product. And she's been through our methodology, and she's going to perform for us. But before that, and before an introduction, I would request my team to give you a quick video capture of how art integration works. And this has been put together by the team at Rhapsody. So they will give you an animated video on how art integration works and the kind of resources that Rhapsody itself is making available to you. I'm very proud that Rhapsody is in collaboration with Macmillan.
Unique methodology places art at the center of academic learning. Using music and visual art, our teachers enable art integration in education through a step-by-step process. First, we mapped art along skills that children need for holistic learning. We then took the mapped skills and applied them to academic lessons for each class. Last, we created songs and activities that allow children to sing their lessons, always with joy. Next, we measured their learning along a dimension that includes academic improvement, musicality, artistic intelligence, and confidence. Each month, this is rigorously assessed and design thought between educator and institution. At the end of the year, we are able to teach through art, integrate, assess, empower. Welcome to the new reality of art integration, music and art being used to teach STEM and other disciplines. Welcome to Rhapsody.
So thank you for that. So Rhapsody and Macmillan, both our teams are at your service to help schools with understanding the implementation of art integration. We're going to be bringing you more of these conclaves. I have to, before we get into Uttara's wonderful performance, I want to place a quick word of thanks to the team from Rhapsody, Srinivas, Nirmal, Padma, Uma, and of course, the irrepressible Dr. Sudha, Anu, and everyone involved from my team who put this together. Thank you, because they've been working tirelessly. The entire team from Macmillan, Altura, of course, the wonderful Vandana, but also Raju, Suruchi, and everybody at the Macmillan team. This is a huge group effort and is itself an art integration case study in collaboration. To all our wonderful panelists and speakers today, as you know, most of them are top people in each of their fields. To make time for so many school heads with us today demonstrates their faith in us and therefore our faith in you. And of course, to all of you wonderful school heads, administrators, and teachers who joined us today, as well as our wonderful guests. Thank you for joining us. Over to Sudha and over to the absolutely formidable Uttara Unnikrishnan.
Okay, welcome back. We conclude today's AIC with a short performance by Uttara Unnikrishnan. Of course, she's an award-winning playback singer, but not to take away from it, she's also the legendary Unnikrishnan sir's daughter. She's been learning from the age of 5, and also not only stops with Carnatic learning, she's also part of the Sargam choir, and of course does playback, and she's a great Western music performer, which many of you are not heard yet. Today she'll be doing a short devotional performance. Over to Uttara. I'm very proud and happy to be mentoring her and teaching her through her musical journey.
Namaskar, one and all. I'm very honored to be singing a few songs for you all today, and I would like to thank my guru, Dr. Sudha Raja, and Anil Uncle for giving me this wonderful opportunity, and I hope you enjoy. Chapati soyariya, Raghumai chapati soyariya, Raghumai chapati soyariya, sada maze dola garti Raghumai chapati soyariya, Raghumai chapati soyariya, sada maze dola garti गोड़ तुझे रूप, गोड़ तुझे नाम, गोड़ तुझे रूप, गोड़ तुझे नाम, दे मजा प्रेम सबका, दे मजा प्रेम सबका, सदा माझे डोला जड तुझे विठो माऊली आंसी वरदे, विठो माऊली आंसी वरदे, संचरो निराई हृदय संचरो निराई हृदय, सदा माझे डोला रडू तुझे, रघुमाई चपती सोयरिया, रघुमाई चपती सोयरिया, सदा माझे डोला रडू तुझे, तो कामने कायना मागणे अनेक, तो कामने कायना मागणे अनेक, तुझे पायी सुख सर्व, तुझे पायी सुख सर्व, सदा माझे डोला जडू तुझे, रघुमाई चपती सोयरिया, रघुमाई चपती सोयरिया, यादवनी भायतु कुलनन्दन माधव मधुसूदन यादवनी भायतु कुलनन्दन माधव मधुसूदन आरो यादवनी भायतु कुलनन्दन माधव मधुसूदन आरो यादवनी भायतु कुलनन्दन माधव मधुसूदन मारो यादवनी भायतु कुलनन्दन माधव मधुसूदन आरो यादवनी भायतु कुलनन्दन माधव मधुसूदन मारो ಶೋಧರ ಮಾವನ ಮಧುರೆಲಿ ಮಡುಹಿತ 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 ಯಶೋದೆ ನಂದನ ನೀ ಬಾರೋ ಯಾದವನಿ ಬಾಯದು ಕುಲನಂದನ ಮಾಧವ ಮಧುಸೂದನ ಆರೋ ಯಾದವನಿ ಬಾಯದು ಕುಲನಂದನ ಮಾಧವ ಮಧುಸೂದನ ಆರೋ ಖಗವಾಹನನೇ ಬಗೆ ಬಗೆ ರೂಪನ ಖಗವಾಹನನೇ ಬಗೆ ಬಗೆ ರೂಪನ ಖಗವಾಹನನೇ ಬಗೆ ಬಗೆ ರೂಪನಿ ನಗೆ ಮುಖದ ದರ್ಶನ ನೀ ಬಾರೋ ಖಗವಾಹನನೇ ಬಗೆ ಬಗೆ ರೂಪನಿ ನಗೆ ಮುಖದ ದರ್ಶನ ನೀ ಬಾರೋ ಜಗದೋಡು ನಿನ್ನಯ ಮಹಿಮಯ ಪೊಗಳುವ ಜಗದೋಳು ನಿನ್ನಯ ಮಹಿಮಯ ಪೊಗಳುವ ಜಗದೋಳು ನಿನ್ನಯ ಮಹಿಮಯ ಪೊಗಳುವ ಜಗದೋಳು ನಿನ್ನಯ ಮಹಿಮಯ ಪೊಗಳುವ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲನ ಈ ಬಾರೋ ಯಾದವ ಈ ಬಾಯದು ಕುಲನಂದನ ಮಾಧವ ಮಧುಸೂದನ ಆರೋ ಯಾದವನಿ ಬಾಯದು ಕುಲನಂದನ ಮಾಧವ ಮಧುಸೂದನ ಬಾರೋ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮನಿ ಸೌಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮನಿ ಸೌಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ, ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮನಿ ಸೌಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ, ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮನಿ ಸೌಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ, ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮನಿ ಸೌಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಹೆಜ್ಜೆ ಮೇಲೊಂದೆಜ್ಜೆಯ ನಿಕ್ಕುತ ಗೆಜ್ಜೆಯ ಕಾಲಿನ ನಾದವ ತೋರುತ ಸಜ್ಜನ ಸಾಧು ಪೂಜೆಯ ವೇಳೆಗೆ ಮಚ್ಚಿಗೆ ಒಳಗಿನ ಬೆಣ್ಣೆಯಂತೆ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಹೆಜ್ಜೆಯ ಮೇಲೊಂದೆಜ್ಜೆಯ ನಿಕ್ಕುತ ಗೆಜ್ಜೆಯ ಕಾಲಿನ ನಾದವ ತೋರುದ ಸಜ್ಜನ ಸಾಧು ಪೂಜೆಯ ವೇಳೆಗೆ ಮಜ್ಜಿಗೆ ಒಳಗಿನ ಬೆಣ್ಣೆಯಂತೆ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಕನಕ ವೃಷ್ಟಿ ಕರೆಯುತ್ತ ಬಾರೆ ಮನೆಗೆ ಮಾನವ ಸಿದ್ಧಿಯ ತೋರೆ, ದಿನಕರ ಕೋಟಿ ತೇಜದಿ ಹೊಳೆಯುವ ಜನಕರಾಯಣ ಕುಮಾರಿ ಬೇಗ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಕನಕ ವೃಷ್ಟಿ ಕರೆಯುತ್ತ ಬಾರೆ ಮನೆಗೆ ಮಾನವ ಸಿದ್ಧಿಯ ತೋರೆ, ದಿನಕರ ಕೋಟಿ ತೇಜದಿ ಹೊಳೆಯುವ ಜನಕರಾಯಣ ಕುಮಾರಿ ಬೇಗ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಶಂಖೆ ಎಲ್ಲದ ಭಾಗ್ಯವ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಕಂಕಣ ಕೈಯ ತಿರುವುದ ಬಾರಿ, ಕುಂಕುಮಾಂಕಿತೆ ಪಂಕಜಲೋಚನೆ ವೆಂಕಟರಮಣನ ಪಿಂಕದ ರಾಣಿ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಶಂಖೆ ಎಲ್ಲದ ಭಾಗ್ಯವ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಕಣ್ಕಣ ಕೈಯ ತಿರುವುದ ಬಾರೆ, ಕುಂಕುಮಾಂಕಿತೆ ಪಂಕಜಲೋಚನೆ ವೆಂಕಟರಮಣನ ಪಿಂಕದ ರಾಣಿ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಅತ್ತಿತ್ತಗಳದೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಮನೆಯೊಳು ನಿತ್ಯ ಸುಮಂಗಳ ನಿತ್ಯ ಮಹೋತ್ಸವ, ಸತ್ಯ ತೋರುವ ಸಾಧು ಸಜ್ಜನರ ಚಿತ್ತದಿ ಹೊಳೆಯುವ ಪುತ್ಥಳಿ ಬೊಂಬೆ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಅತ್ತಿತ್ತಗಳದೆ ಭಕ್ತರ ಮನೆಯೊಳು ನಿತ್ಯ ಸುಮಂಗಳ ನಿತ್ಯ ಮಹೋತ್ಸವ, ಸತ್ಯ ತೋರುವ ಸಾಧು ಸಜ್ಜನರ ಚಿತ್ತದಿ ಹೊಳೆಯುವ ಪುತ್ಥಳಿ ಬೊಂಬೆ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಸಕ್ಕರೆ ತುಪ್ಪ ಕಾಲುವ ಹರಿಸಿ ಶುಕ್ರವಾರದ ಪೂಜೆಯ ವೇಳೆಗೆ ಅಕರೆಯುಳ್ಳ ಅಳಗಿರಿ ರಂಗನ ಸುಖ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲನ ರಾಣಿ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ಸಕ್ಕರೆ ತುಪ್ಪ ಕಾಲುವ ಹರಿಸಿ ಶುಕ್ರವಾರದ ಪೂಜೆಯ ವೇಳೆಗೆ ಅಕರೆಯುಳ್ಳ ಅಳಗಿರಿ ರಂಗನ ಸುಖ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲನ ರಾಣಿ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮನಿ ಸೌಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ, ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮನಿ ಸೌಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ, ನಮ್ಮಮ್ಮನಿ ಸೌಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಬಾರಮ್ಮ. Thank you.